Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It's Friday, October 25th, 2019. I'm Michael Brooks on a Michael Casual Friday. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, Daniel Bessner, professor of international relations at the University of Washington, historian. We're talking about Kashmir, what's happening in South Asia, the tension between India and Pakistan, the potentially most dangerous place on earth, and then Daniel's recent Jacobin deep dive on the differences in foreign policy between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Then Nomiki Konst joins us in studio to play sound and laugh and laugh and laugh and heavily criticize Pete Buttigieg, who is the absolute worst. Pete Buttigieg might be called to testify in a trial related to systemic racism and police brutality in his police department in the college town that he runs.
Good.
Very good. Could not come a moment too soon. Buttigieg also he wanted, apparently now he's quote-unquote clarifying, more justices like Anthony Kennedy. We'll talk about his actual disastrous Supreme Court plan, even as Bernie Sanders says, I'll go for Sotomayor and Ginsburg. But that's just me.
Could have left out Sotomayor.
He could have left out Ginsburg.
That's what I'm saying. Left it at.
At Sotomayor.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. But both far better than Kennedy. Oakland School Board votes to close schools, drawing protests and vicious police repression. Turkey's Erdogan calls on the U.S. to hand over the Kurdish commander of the Democratic Forces in northern Syria. The Pentagon is planning to send tanks and armored vehicles to Syria's oil fields. Sometimes you end wars, but then you have to start other wars. Justice Department investigation of Russia probe is criminal in nature. A personal familiar with the probe says White House officials are expected to back up a diplomat's testimony over Trump's push for a Ukraine probe into the Bidens. India is allowing Kashmir to hold local elections even as the lockdown continues. Iraqi police opened fire to disperse protesters on Baghdad streets, and now even Hezbollah is getting called to account for neoliberalism and austerity in Lebanon. Chile unrest continues as the UN human rights chief is dispatched. Protesters stay on the streets again against austerity. House Democrats, along with Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, vote for him, not the Kennedy kid, unveil a bill to protect climate refugees. Very important piece of legislation. A federal judge holds Betsy DeVos in contempt, even as a administrator of the student loan system quits and says basically all of them should be forgiven.
You come at the queen, you best not miss, bitch.
Vote for Bernie Sanders. Full student loan forgiveness. ACLU says 1,500 migrant children were taken from parents by the Trump administration. And the ACLU celebrates a settlement ending in unconstitutional efforts to silence pipeline protesters in South Dakota. And Bernie Sanders puts forward a radical marijuana legalization and reparations plan.
At 420, no less.
Holla at your boy. All that and more on today's Majority Report. Bernie Sanders is back fresh off of the mega rally in Queens with AOC. Here he is on Jimmy Kimmel explaining why we need to have full health care for everybody, period.
You speak very honestly on these subjects. I think you are very blunt and brutally honest, almost to the point where it's shocking to see a politician say, yes, this is going to make your taxes go up, but in the big picture, I think that it will make it cost you less.
Right. Look, here is the reality. We are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. I believe that health care is a human right and not a privilege. And what that means is we need all that we need to do. People make this more complicated than it is. Medicare right now is the most popular health insurance program in America. I want to expand Medicare to include dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses. And then what I want to do is lower the eligibility age first year from 65 down to 55, then to 45, then to 35, and then we cover everybody. And when we do that, there are no more premiums. You're not paying any more premiums, no more co-payments, no more deductibles, no more out-of-pocket expenses. And virtually every person in this country will save money on health care because we are currently spending twice as much per person as the people of any other major country. And the reason for that is that the function of the healthcare system today, shock of all shocks, is to make the drug companies and the insurance companies incredibly rich. Well, I don't think that's the function of healthcare. So if you are paying, just as an example, if somebody who is self-employed today is paying $15,000, $20,000 a year in premiums and out-of-pocket expenses, that's all gone. Well, they may pay $7,000 or $8,000 more in taxes. They're $12,000 to the good. And that's what we have got to do. We have to do what every other country does, is make sure that anybody can go to any doctor they want, whenever they want, and not worry about the cost of health care.
Perfectly put. This is something that he's been fighting for with clarity and consistency for 40 years. He's absolutely right. And I just want to say, I mean, notice the difference here. I sympathize with Warren's resistance of the tax framing question because it's a fundamentally right-wing way of asking the question. However, and of course, it's still unclear what her actual healthcare plan is. I've actually even heard that it might involve a VAT, which is extremely regressive if that turns out to be the case.
She's talked so many circles around it that it's really concerning to me.
I mean, yes, and there's some sound that we'll get to in the latter part of the show. I'm not clear where she is on this issue. I'm sure she'll put forward something that's better than the status quo. Biden has put forward something that's better than the status quo. But I want to just say that getting tripped up, the refusal and the transparent concern about, oh, well, if I say there will be middle-class tax cuts, it will be clipped, tax increase, it will be clipped in an ad and played in November. That's true. But you get caught in playing these word games and going around in circles about that one specific word, even as, again, I sympathize with her resistance to it. But Bernie right there, it's clean. Yes, you might pay $7,000 more in taxes. You'll save several, at least maybe even more, several thousand in private health insurance costs. Boom, done, simple, it. So you make the same point, you bring the same clarity, but you also, you don't invite the look of being a sort of prevaricating politician. And I think, again, this is one of those issues. You can go back literally to the 1970s. He was making exactly the same point. He was right then. He's right now. He's absolutely right about the implementation. I remember when Sanders' bill got unveiled and the Jayapal bill got unveiled in the House, even the sort of Voxes of the world at the time were like, okay, this is how you do it. These are real policy proposals. They're profound. They're not that difficult to implement at all. And there's a clear timeline. And again, it covers absolutely every single person fully, including mental health, dental health, and eye care. That's what we need.
Yep. And when you get out in front of the question like that, little twerps like Mayor Pete can't make an issue out of it. Like, no, you're not being honest about the costs. Like, yes, you are.
Right. Exactly. And then we can go to a dishonest little twerp like Mayor Pete and we can say how Medicare for all who want it is a public option, which you're not being clear about how it's going to compete, how it's going to work with the broader regulatory environment for insurance companies. It's still going to leave millions of people vulnerable and overcharged. It almost certainly will continue, a rate of people dying premature deaths. After several year decline, it looks like uninsured rates are starting to move back up a bit. So you have to explain to us, Mayor Pete, why you still want to leave millions of people vulnerable and underinsured, and also why, you talk about being young and thinking about different things. I mean, Mayor Pete is giving us the progressive option of 2007. How about we go with the progressive option of 2019? That someone like Bernie Sanders has been right about and clear about for 40 years. Folks, there's no other way of saying it. Well, let me see. Actually, all right, yeah, no, I think we should probably we should just do ads, yeah. Support for today's show is brought to you by Third Love. With more than 80 sizes, including their signature half-cup sizes, Third Love designs bras with breast size and shape in mind for a perfect fit and premium feel. We have a testimonial that will really show you how great Third Love is. I like that they don't have a zillion options, so it's easy to choose something quickly. The fit is great. I usually have to return most bras I order online, even though they're in my size. I ordered 2 and both fit. That almost never happens. Super comfortable for everyday bra, but not as boring as most t-shirts bras. Subtle, cute details, so I don't feel basic. This is hands down the most comfortable bra you'll own, with straps that won't slip and tagless labels. I can't speak to the bra part, but I hate the tagless label.
Yeah, tagless is
an
good.
Incredibly good design feature.
I can co-sign the concept of taglessness.
Taglessness is another testament to the superior design quality of Third Love. Not to mention lightweight, super thin memory foam cups that mold to your shape. Best of all, every customer has 60 days to wear it, wash it, and put it to the test. If you don't love it, you can return it, and Third Love will wash it and donate it to a woman in need. Third Love knows there's a perfect bra for everyone. So right now they're offering our listeners 15% off of your first order. Go to thirdlove.com/majority now to find your perfect fitting bra and get 15% off of your first purchase. That's thirdlove.com/majority for 15% off today. Today's show is also brought to you by Blinkist. If you feel like you don't have enough time to read all the books on your list, you're not alone. Blinkist is an app that compiles key takeaways from thousands of nonfiction books. Everything you need to know is condensed down into 15 minutes, and you can read or listen to it with the app. Blinkist is really unique, and it works on your phone, tablet, or web browser. You'll find everything from health and self-help to history and business books included in Blinkist libraries. I am totally following Sam's lead on this, and I am reading business and optimization and self-help books like by any number of authors, including the 4-Hour Work Week. I checked out the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And then, actually, we'll get to them later, but even something that, I'm not going to read all of it, but it's in the zeitgeist. Michelle Obama's new book is an example. It's extremely convenient and great to use. And there's just literally only so many hours in the day, and there's total information overload. So this gives you the condensed guide you need. With Blinkist, you get unlimited access to read or listen to a massive library of condensed nonfiction books. All the books you want for all one low price. Right now, for limited time, Blinkist has a special offer for our listeners. Go to Blinkist.com/majority to try it for free for 7 days and save 25% off of your new subscription. That's BLINKIST.com Kashmir.com/majority to start your free 7-day trial and save 25% off and get titles like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, Becoming by Michelle Obama, Getting Things Done by David Allen, The Power of Habits, and Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, one of my faves. All right, everybody, we're going to take a brief break, and we will be right back with Daniel Bessner. The Majority Report, Michael Brooks here. Joining us now is Daniel Bessner. He's author of a fantastic book, which I recommend everybody order and read to help you understand the world we're in, Democracy in Exile, Hans Speyer, and the Rise of the Defense Intellectual. Now, that sounds like a heavy lift, and it is in the sense that you'll learn a lot, but it's an incredibly readable and engaging book, which is not necessarily something you would expect from the Pyle professor of American International of History of, oh my God, I'm going to mess it up, Daniel. The Pyle professor
totally fine.
of American Foreign Policy at the Scoop Jackson School at the University of Washington. And also, I guess you would expect it on this end, a regular contributor on TMBS. Daniel, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Michael.
Let's talk about Kashmir a bit. Always apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. We know that a couple of months ago now, the Indian BJP government tore up the Indian Constitution and implemented a crackdown and news blackout with reports of numerous vicious human rights violations in Kashmir. We also know that this actually also correlates within, I believe it's Assam, which is another region in India with a demand that Muslim people establish proof of citizenship and residency in India, that this all fits into this bigger extreme right Hindutva agenda as represented by Narendra Modi and the BJP. And also, though, that this story goes back to the founding of the modern state of India, and that Kashmir is already one of the most, if not the most militarized region on earth. There's also a geopolitical component with Pakistan, and that's heated up the last week with fire being exchanged between Indian and Pakistani forces. Can you kind of give us a big picture rundown of the different dynamics at play and what might be the most dangerous part of the world right now?
Sure. So the first thing to probably recognize is that when people talk about modern nuclear exchanges in the literature on nuclear exchange, they generally refer to the most likely place for such an exchange to be in South Asia, in the Indian subcontinent, and particularly between Pakistan and India. And so most of the models done on what would be the effect of a nuclear exchange have been done on basically the exchange of about 100 Hiroshima-level bombs. And according to the most recent analyses, as far as I'm aware, were, relatively weak nuclear bombs in terms of 2019 exchanged in such a way there would be probably a global famine. So one of the most important things to recognize, and why people listening to this and Americans in general should be concerned with what's going on, is because it has a profound potential to totally affect geopolitics. So it's a really important issue, the relationship between India and Pakistan. So that's just the first thing to highlight when you're talking about this region generally. But in terms of taking maybe a bit of a more medium historical view, is that I think it's important to think of what's going on now as a process of state formation and state consolidation. Mm-hmm. So basically, if you think about the fact that India and Pakistan were founded in 1947, at the outcome of a century plus of British colonialism, you can see that these are relatively new states, some of the first post-colonial states in the world. And what you see here going on is that what Modi, as I think, is trying to do, is trying to bring a region that has long been an excuse to arm the Indian military and to basically keep on going with the war against Pakistan under firm control of the Indian state. So one way to think of this is that this is the end of a long process of state consolidation that is actually rather common when you think about state formation. For example, think about, let's say, the first 80 years of the United States, 1776 to roughly the Civil War. So these are a period of state formation. So I think it's important to think of it in terms of that and what's going on here. Secondly, what you have here is the creation of this sort of national mythos ideology organized around Hindutva, as you just mentioned. So it's also crucial to Modi to justify what he's doing by consolidating the Kashmiri, essentially consolidating his control of Kashmir. And this is something that's not only going on in India, but also going on in Pakistan with the relatively new Prime Minister, Imran Khan, a cricket hero of the 1990s, in the last year or two, basically also consolidating control of the so-called Kurum agencies, right? What had been semi-autonomous regions are now being put under increasing control of the centralized Pakistani state. So on both sides of the India-Pakistan divide, what you see is this process of state consolidation within this larger process of sort of geopolitical enmity that has existed between the two states from the beginning. And that is important because even though, we all theoretically want world peace, the sort of enmity between the two countries has been a justifying logic for the militaries of both countries in order to increase their own power and their own hold over the basic governance structures of both of these. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward, particularly as we enter really a new era of really post-Cold War geopolitics, seeing the emergence of not only these new right-wing authoritarian governments, but also new forms of alliances that would have been impossible during the era of the Cold War. The one that really leaps out at me is the one the pseudo one, at least, between Israel and Saudi Arabia, right? These previously unthinkable alliances are now, as the logic of the Cold War recedes, as people come to power who weren't totally formed by the Cold War, these sorts of new logics of geopolitics are coming into play. And I think you're seeing that right now with what's going on between India and Pakistan. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the future.
And it seems to me, I mean, let's actually go to Pakistan in a minute, but in India too, that when you talk about this state formation, it's a specific shot at the Nehru consensus, right? So, it's always dangerous because you're skipping a lot of history. And of course, even after the founding of independent India and then partition with Pakistan led to millions of people's deaths Then you have, a history that includes Indira Gandhi declaring martial law, sterilizing poor and lower caste people in the 1980s after she's assassinated because of her rights violations of the Sikh community. She's literally assassinated by her own bodyguards who are Sikh. The the Congress Party looks the other way while there are days of pogroms that are, just mass murder of Sikhs. And then then there's this other thread line of BJP, RSS, and Hindu nationalism going back to like the 20s. The person, Gandhi's assassin is at the very least connected to this politics. But that being said, you did have at least some other countervailing tendencies in India of a certain commitment of as an example, an incredibly progressive constitution written by the, Dalit untouchable Ambedkar, who converted to Buddhism and rejected the caste system and was a Marxist. Nehru, who did have some clear commitments to open society. So that when Modi is doing this, it's also, when you talk about that state consolidation, it is a violent rejection of what had been a certain founding consensus of the people that had liberated India.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And I think you also have to understand, at least from my colleagues who study this, is I'm basically repeating what they said, Sunila Kale and Radhika Govindrajan, two great scholars at the University of Washington. My sense of talking to them is that some of the proto-BJP had also been victims of the sort of 70s martial law and the 70s emergency law. So this is, in a sense, a direct reaction to what you were just speaking about, that these are the dialectic, essentially, of Indian politics seems to be operating in a serious way right now. And of course, it's important to recognize that India is an enormous country, an enormously complex country with different regional traditions and different regional governments. And so it's in some sense difficult to think, to speak totally coherently of a unitary Indian state in the way that one might speak about it in other areas of the world. But I do think that what we're seeing here is the attempt to centralize that type of power, but particularly from the geopolitical perspective, what's interesting to see is what this is going to mean, particularly for Indian-China relations, right? You already see Pakistan has long been associating with China, and as the United States probably begins to retreat from the region, and who knows, we might be in Afghanistan for another 50 years, but my guess is in the next 5-10 years, the United States will maintain some sort of rump force, but will no longer be as much of a power player in a region, particularly as it's been in the last 20 years. The geopolitical constellation is totally changing in South Asia, particularly as China continues its quote-unquote rise. So you're going to, it'll be interesting to see how India tries to balance against China as it begins to assert itself more and more in the subcontinent itself and in East Asia and Southeast Asia in particular. So you basically have, what's most interesting to me as a scholar of international relations, is the emergence of a new post-Cold War order. We don't quite have a name for it, but basically the geopolitical order that existed for the last 30 years, and when the United States was the unquestioned hegemon, is going to be something different going forward. What that is, I don't think anyone on the ground knows, but I think you're seeing its early formation right now. And again, you see it with this sort of consolidation of the hold over Kashmir, or this consolidation over the Kurram agencies in both India and Pakistan in the subcontinent. You see a somewhat coming to an end, perhaps, I mean, only time will tell, but a coming to the end of that early period of state formation. The first 80, 100 years of states are generally very violent and very destructive. Ours ended with a civil war and, the continued violence of Jim Crow and things along those lines. I don't want to mitigate that, but also you're seeing, the end of what might be considered to be the first stage of state consolidation and state formation going forward in the post-colonial world.
In Pakistan, though, I mean, is that really... I'm wondering in the Pakistani case, because there's conflicting reports on what Imran Khan represents, right? And again, this is also an incredible simplification, but just to try to get a little bit of grounding in Pakistan, I mean, you have a state that's founded by actually, certainly a Muslim but a very kind of, I guess you would say in the parlance of today, a very moderate liberal Muslim whose argument for founding Pakistan is, if you watch the Attenborough movie, it's really about his own personal ambition. Others would say that, it's actually just a deep concern about basically the civil rights position of Muslims in an independent India. So you have these conflicting tendencies, and it seems like in India, Pakistan, as we talk about today, going back to the 80s, is one big thing that happened is that under General Zia-ul-Haq, who took power in a coup that got rid of Bhutto, who was actually, again, a very someone that I think we could really easily problematize in terms of his record, but was certainly had some socialist tendency and rhetoric, a huge amount of charisma. There's a story of Bhutto that was I loved, especially just because of the flip he did, where in a meeting apparently with JFK, Kennedy said, Mr. Bhutto, if you were in the United States, I'd have you in my cabinet. And Bhutto looked at him and he said, if I was in the United States, you'd be in my cabinet, which I always like that sort of flip. But you have the Bhutto family, and then you have the Zarif family, and there's a lot more history to get into, but let's just say that they represent different political parties / kind of patronage network dynastic politics. And I think people are probably certainly familiar with someone like Benazir Bhutto. She had extraordinary amount of charisma and physical courage, who was assassinated. And then there's the military formally being in control of Pakistan, as is the case with Musharraf, and then this sort of, really a deep state would be the word, right? Particularly led by the inter-services intelligence, which is always, at the very least, is dominating Pakistani foreign policy, particularly with regards to Afghanistan, India, Saudi, and the United States. As well as China, obviously. But anywhere that there's some type of guerrilla operations or counterinsurgency, they're at the center of it. So, and then cutting across all of these is different conflicts about the idea of what Islam is. So it's just very complicated. And when you talk about consolidating, is Imran Khan a consolidator, or is he... the population is so disgusted and burned out by the old politics and the relentless, the corruption, the austerity, the neoliberalism, the feudalism. Really everything that's bad is fused, right, in these different Pakistani tendencies. He's charismatic. He represents something new, but is he really just the new, charismatic vehicle of the same military intelligence apparatus interests?
Well, I think from my understanding is it's believed to be that he's associated with the military. So in some sense, he does represent those interests, and I think it's right. But I do think the charisma and the quote unquote populist energy that he brings does have the potential to do something new for the country of Pakistan, especially considering its new geopolitical position vis-a-vis India and vis-a-vis China. So I think that is what he's really trying to do, is trying to situate the Pakistan in a truly post-American South Asia. What that looks like is going to be difficult to know, because I think it depends a lot on essentially the developing Chinese-Pakistani relationship and what that trade relationship looks like and what that military exchange relationship looks like. But essentially, he has to balance. As I see it, he feels that he has to balance against India in a meaningful way, particularly as Modi takes increasingly horrible anti-Muslim actions within India itself. The rejection of particularly the Muslim cultural elite, that goes back to the Mughal Empire, and this, the embrace of Hindutva and everything related to that. So I think he's in a relatively difficult position. And I think everything that you're saying also highlights the difficulties in general, as a general intellectual problem of applying, Western intellectual models of a nation state and imposing them on territories. First, the formal imposition of this particular model of state formation, that is the nation state, on the post-colonial world, which happened for a variety of reasons. But in terms of analyzing it, there are so many different divisions within these societies, and the state is weak in some areas and very strong in other areas, that it's difficult, again, to think about how to speak of these societies, or rather these nation states, as unitary actors. Because as you suggested, with the various interests going on here, it's difficult to actually know what's really going on. But I do think there is an attempt, at least from what I can tell, to try to consolidate the state's control over areas where it had formerly ceded some form of organization and control, particularly in the formerly semi or autonomous areas of the Kurm agencies. But to me, what'll be most interesting, again, from an IR perspective, which is really, I'm not an expert by any means on Pakistani or Indian domestic politics, but from an IR perspective, what do these countries do as the United States in particular begins to recede from the region, and this new post-Cold War logic? And I think the next few years are going to be crucial to figuring out what exactly that looks like, particularly as both India and Pakistan react to China. And then this leads to the question of what is China going to do in the region? The United States has long asserted control over its entire hemisphere, particularly in Latin America, and that goes back hundreds of years at this point. Is China going to try to attempt to do something similar in the region, or is it going to continue to just balance against India, make inroads with Pakistan, try to dominate basically Korea and Japan and Indonesia in some sense through economic means and trade means, or is it going to try to do something more aggressive? I don't think it will, but that's really an open question. We haven't seen extremely powerful China in the modern era yet.
Daniel Bessner, you have a new piece in the Jacobin where you outline the real profound differences between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren on foreign policy, which very much relate to not only our, aspirations as people with a socialistic viewpoint and a desire for greater solidarity and a post-hegemonic world of all kinds, whether the United States or China, but also with real practical ramifications in terms of, handling these potentially very explosive situations in a way that's, I'll actually say, like prudent and safe. Spell out the differences for us.
Sure. So I think what's important to emphasize at first is that when it comes to declared policies, there's actually like a bunch of similarities between Bernie and Warren. No, they both say they want to end endless war. They both say they want to reduce the influence of the military-industrial complex on foreign policy making. They both say they want to develop trade policies that benefit labor at the expense of capital. So I think this is what has led a bunch of people who are only, understandably casually watching this competition to basically say that there's no difference between them, and if there's no difference between them, we should vote for the female candidate. And I appreciate that if there were truly no difference between them. But the problem is that when you actually dig into what they say, and I put on my intellectual historian hat here, when you read what they say, when you read their texts, when you read what their vision of foreign policy that they express, they actually have rather radically different understandings of what the United States' role in the world is. And not to put too fine a point on it, but in brief, I think it's fair to describe Warren as a rather traditional American nationalist. One might even say American exceptionalist. At some point in one of her foreign policy speeches, she says something along the lines of she will be dedicated to defending America's interests first and foremost in the world. And Bernie, I think, really taps into a much older tradition of social democratic internationalism, or democratic socialist internationalism, however you want to put it, that goes back, roughly a century plus in the United States. So where Warren, in all of her foreign policies, essentially says repeatedly, I'm here to defend American workers. I'm here to defend American interests. I'm here to defend American labor and American business. Of course, she also says that, which is, as far as I know, something that Bernie has never said. Bernie very much talks in an internationalist key. So he very much says that his interest is not to only defend American workers, but to basically end what he calls the race to the bottom, what his campaign calls the race to the bottom in the international economy, where American workers have to compete with Vietnamese workers or Malaysian workers who are making very little money with very few benefits. So what he wants to do, he's speaking in a really internationalist way, which I think is crucial, considering that we still live in the era of incredible global interconnectedness, of globalization, if that's what you want to refer to it as. And it's not really possible, at least if you're a progressive and you take as your foundational philosophical position that all human lives are equal, to think in the explicitly nationalist terms that Warren does. That if you truly adopt a left-wing politics, which to me the foundational position is that all people again are equal, you need to think in an internationalist way that takes the lives of people abroad as seriously as you take the lives of Americans. And I think you actually saw this in the most recent rally when Bernie said, look to your side. Are you willing to fight for someone who you don't know, who's not you? And that is the argument of his foreign policy. The argument of his foreign policy is that we need an international progressive movement in order to basically solve the challenges of the day. And Bernie identifies the major challenges of the day as being global. He repeatedly talks about climate change and global inequality. And these, he is right to say, are only going to be solved through international coalition building and what he calls a global progressive movement. Whereas Warren, as far as I can tell, is still thinking in the traditional sort of nation-state centered way of the Cold War and post-Cold War eras. And I think this is probably due to the fact that foreign policy isn't a major interest of hers. It never was. In fact, I would characterize Warren as being very similar ideologically to a 1950s era Eisenhower Republican, like a liberal Republican. As someone who studies that era, that is what her policies read like most to me. She thinks capitalism is good, but some bad capitalist has done some bad things. She thinks the United States should sometimes go to war, but we've gone to too many wars because some corrupt people have done some corrupt things, while Bernie adopts a fundamentally different understanding of both foreign policy and the United States' role in the world.
Let's really spell out. I mean, first of all, in fact, it is a leadership role, and the framing of it has major implications. So actually building a frame around solidarity versus sort of a national self-interest argument. I mean, as one example, and Ryan Grimm actually brought this to my attention, and Ryan Grimm is certainly, certainly more pro-Warren than me. So it was interesting getting it from him. But even when Warren has spoken very little on civilian casualties. Now, all of them speak very little on civilian casualties. But, Bernie at times has certainly talked about the toll of U.S. just abuses and civilian casualties abroad. When Warren has, and it's extremely infrequently, she'll always frame it in terms of the bad public relations perception for the United States that is created by, as an example, all of the people the U.S. military is killing in Afghanistan. So as this gets practical, and you also point to in your piece, I mean, one, we know that right out of the gate, this is the one area, there's all these arguments about theories of change, whether or not we should have a more ambitious or more limited agenda on, major areas of domestic policy. But what we all know is that when you walk into the White House, and this is actually another piece of your work, this is a big problem structurally. But as it stands now, the president has a vast bureaucracy and a huge amount of power over foreign policy, which, if anything is not mitigated by Congress, it's probably mitigated and mediated by the military and intelligence apparatus, which is, obviously profoundly dangerous and undemocratic. But so these perceptions and how they look at the world matter hugely. And I think to drill into it specifically, let's talk about climate change and how it does relate to at least the notion that we need some type of transnational coordination to tackle a common problem versus this notion that, and again, this is in the context of Warren voting for Trump military budget increases and Sanders voting against them, that we can kind of like green upgrade the military. And And just as I asked this, there's the kind of moral objection, sure, but there's also sort of like a, how green can Walmart ever be component to this, right? Like, yes, you can, and sure, you could, let's have tanks that run on hydrogen, fine. But at the end of the day, having a vast global killing state is going to eat up a infinite amount of human resources, even if you make it slightly more energy efficient, which, by the way, the Pentagon has actually been working on doing for quite some time. The Pentagon is, better on these issues than other parts of the federal bureaucracy. But get into the drill down of not just the philosophical difference, but the enormous practical implications of we need to sit down with fellow stakeholders to deal with the climate crisis versus let's have solar-powered hovercrafts.
Yeah, I think that's very big. And an important thing to emphasize is that if the United States is focusing on its, $700+ billion military budget, they're not focusing on other things. So an important thing to emphasize is that when you have this global military state, it actually takes not only resources, but energy away from doing things like solving climate change. And you're never going to solve climate change through a green military for a variety of reasons. One, that isn't going to really stop anything, but two, and probably most importantly, it's going to signal to the rest of the world that the United States isn't serious about transnational organization or international negotiations. So I think what is difficult for us to appreciate from the United States is how much the rest of the world distrusts us for a variety of reasons, because of basically everything we did during the Cold War and everything we did after the Cold War, where it was made clear that what U.S. leadership meant was not that we were going to, interact with other nations and try to guide them in a quote unquote positive direction, but that we were going to tell other nations what to do. So there's an enormous lack of trust in the United States that maintaining a global military state you're never going to overcome it if you maintain the 800 bases. I don't care how clean energy and efficient they are. So that is probably the most important way in which Warren's basically, as far as I can tell, status quo vision is going to prevent solving these international problems. The first step in solving climate change is reducing America's military bases by showing the rest of the world that the United States is going to take them seriously as relatively equal negotiating partners, particularly China and particularly India, which, as everyone knows, are two of the largest global emitters in the world. I think the top three are India, China, and the U.S. Apologies if I get that wrong, but I'm pretty sure that they're in the top five, definitely. So we're going to need to negotiate with these countries, and we're going to need to negotiate from an area of good faith. And this is why I think it's actually very critical who is president, because, as you suggested at the beginning of your comment and question, is that the president basically is literally a king. In all of the areas of the federal bureaucracy and federal state-making capacity, foreign policy is probably the area in which the president has the most discretion for a variety of reasons. In the last 70 or so years, foreign policy authority has increasingly centralized not only around the president, but in the White House itself. The National Security Council is an incredibly influential body of foreign policy making, as we've talked about before on your podcast. And so this is the area, probably more so than any other area, unless the president pursues a policy of executive orders, which has, its benefits and drawbacks, and we could talk about that Bernie or Warren is going to be able to make an enormous difference. And I think that's important to recognize, because Bernie clearly has long-standing, decades-long anti-imperialist credentials in a way that Warren just does not. I don't mean to keep on, trashing her, but I just don't think that she cares much about foreign policy, and I don't think she's really thought about it that much. It's never been part of her political vision or her political perspective. So I think it's actually really important to look beyond just the pure policies that both recommend, and to really think, like, what is their vision of the United States' role in the world? That is not to say that if Warren gets into office, I don't think I don't think things would be totally the same. I imagine that she would probably stop intervening as much. I imagine that she would try to negotiate trade agreements that actually benefit labor over capital, but I also imagine that she really wouldn't get rid of any of the bases. So I think that she would keep the structure. My guess is that Warren would keep the structure of American foreign policy relatively intact while making changes in the superstructure of the policies, whereas Bernie at least could begin a process of changing that structure. And I want to emphasize that this is probably a decades-long process. What I always say is Rome wasn't built in a day, right? But it also wasn't taken apart in a day. And so I think what you need to do is you need to elect someone like Bernie to at least begin the fundamental structural transformation that is necessary, not only that we, keep on diverting resources from welfare to weapons, but that we're able to negotiate with international partners in a meaningful way to basically take on these problems of the global commons, climate change, and global inequality.
Yeah, and as a final question, I mean, as part of that project that Sanders is bringing to the table, there's people like Matt Duss as an example, and I would say in the broader intellectual sense, like Adoma Ketchiachu and you, who are taking the next phase of a left-wing critique. And this is another reason why it's really important that people order Democracy in Exile, Hans Speyer, and the Rise of the Defense Intellectuals, because you're actually working programmatically. And I think that, that's another thing that's happening around Bernie as well, which is that if there isn't an active effort to at least start to rethink these things, then you just revert to bureaucratic type. And that's the same people who've implemented these disasters of the last several decades. So before you go, could you just touch on that?
Sure. So basically, what I think my book actually relates directly to this, because the reason that I studied a guy like Hans Speyer, who is one of the architects of the national security state in the mid-20th century, is that I wanted to see what were the ideas and assumptions that actually animated the structure that we have now. Because the structure that we have now was essentially created during World War II, and it's when you get, the first permanent propaganda agencies, you get the first permanent intelligence, really professionalized intelligence apparatus, and after World War II, the National Security Act of 1947, you get the precursor to the Department of Defense, you get the formal creation of the CIA, and you get the creation of the National Security Council. So what I wanted to do by studying Speyer was to figure out why someone who actually started his life as a socialist thought that the creation of these institutions was necessary to world peace. And it essentially had to do with his particular vision of geopolitics that emerged from his experiences, first with fascism and then with basically Stalinism during and after World War II. And when you actually look at the founding moment of these institutions, I want to add, that continue to define what American foreign policy is, you see that almost all of the assumptions that the people who made these institutions, who built them, had no longer hold. Right? The United States is the overwhelming military power in the world. It really faces no real threat, despite what the foreign policy establishment would have you believe. And in fact, we've gone to such an absurd degree that we have roughly 800 bases compared to, depending on who you ask, the 20 or so Russia has, or the 1 to 9 that China has. So this is ridiculous. The imperial order that the United States has created today is ridiculous. And the assumptions that made that order created, that made sure that order was created in the first place, no longer hold. And I saw that by examining this whole Hans Speyer thing, and I relate it to today in my book. So I think that's what's really critical, is that what we really need as an organized left is to begin a project of not only ideological transformation and, seizing of the means of production, as crucial as that might be, but also thinking in an imperial way in terms of the imperial structure, not thinking in imperial way, thinking in terms of the imperial structures that we have, and thinking about how to transform those structures programmatically, to have a project of institutional reform. So let's say, we're not going to have it if Bernie wins and he enters in 2020, but let's say in 10 years, in the next 4 to 8 to 12 years, that the left wing actually has a project of institutional reform to say, no, we actually should abolish the CIA and replace it with this, or not even replace it with this, and just say we don't want a global intelligence apparatus at least organized in the way that it was. Abolish the NSC because it's too anti-democratic, and abolish the DOD because it actually makes the military too much of a foreign policy maker. So we need to be thinking in these structural terms, and this is what I tried to get at in my book, and I think this is the crucial project going forward. And we're really at the beginning of it. We're really in an inchoate stage of it, but I think you're going to see it happen more and more going forward as the social democratic left continues to assert itself in American politics.
And I just want to add, too, I mean, this is also the answer to people who, will slide into my timeline with sometimes legitimate and sometimes just whiny and pedantic, like, oh, but what about Bernie? He was bad on such and such. And, the answer to that is, well, in some cases, like with Libya, yeah, he was. And the second and bigger and more relevant point is we're in a context now where, first of all, unlike any other candidate, he can revert to type, which goes back to fighting Reagan's dirty wars in Central America in the 1980s when, he's the mayor. This is totally unparalleled. And also that because we do think structurally and we do understand the movement and the structure of a campaign, that this is the opportunity to start taking those baby steps. And of course, there's a huge amount to do. And of course, there's way more that needs to be put on the table. But do you actually start that movement or not? And that's really the very basic and very fundamental question.
Yeah, and I would just add, my guess is that movement wouldn't even begin to get going with Warren.
Of course not.
I don't think she cares about it. I do not think she'd expend political capital on challenging the military, which is what you're going to need to do. You're going to need to challenge the top brass of the military, and you're going to need to expend a fair bit of political capital, and I don't think she has the interest or concern with that. I just don't. I don't see it.
Solidarity, not solar drones. The book is Democracy in Exile, Hans Speyer and the Rise of the Defense Intellectual, the United States and the World. Honestly, I can't emphasize not only, first of all, this is a book that I read cover to cover, which is increasingly difficult in today's world. And this is a fantastically fun book to read because Daniel Bessner is actually a very, very good writer, in addition to being a shaper of young minds at the Pyle School, at the Scoop Jackson School at the University of Washington. I always love that you teach there. I find that hilarious. And you can hear him regularly, including our illicit history two-parter of the Rand Corporation and the defense apparatus for TMBS. Daniel, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. Talk to you later, man.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Bye.
Guys, really do. Matt, have you read that book?
No, it's on my list.
Okay, because it's not on it's not an audio form.
I think it is on audio.
Really?
Actually, maybe
I
let
thought
me
you
check.
actually already read it. I really would order that book. Let's put a link of it in the show notes. I was going to say the first step so that
maybe not. That might be
in 8 years we can have the Constitution amended so Ilhan Omar can run for president. Nomiki's here. She's arrived.
Camera now? Is it?
Yes. Is she on camera now?
I escaped
Indeed.
the MTA hellhole that I feel like it just gets exponentially worse.
Why? You're a New York political pro.
I mean, it's not hard. It's hashtag Cuomo's MTA. I feel like we need to revive that a little bit.
I'm with it.
The MTA board chair was out. It's kind of back in now. There's a lot of controversy. He's supposed to be the guru who fixed the MTA or the other subway systems around the world. But he can't fix this one because, I don't know, maybe he doesn't have any money to fix it because we won't tax the mother effing billionaires of this city.
There we go.
It's pretty simple, really.
It's really simple.
Don't let
Just
anybody
tax them.
complicate what's simple. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick. Like,
Then how are we going to pay for it?
No, it's not.
Tax the freebies.
You
Those
could literally just there's especially if you're actually in New York,
right.
just go on that very same subway, wait for your transfer for 30 minutes, and
Maybe.
then go for there's a several block radius on the Upper East Side, or you can go to Tribeca. You could literally go physically where the money is.
Right.
That we just need to take back to put into this
That's
stuff.
it.
That's it.
Well, we should have an Occupy MTA. Wait,
not
are
a bad
we
idea.
starting a movement right now?
I think we might be
There we
doing
go.
it. I'm not opposed to it.
Where
There
would
have
we
been
occupy?
whispers about how we need a new militant and radical transit riders union in this town. So maybe
Did
that's
you
the
see what they
project
did
that
in
we're gonna get on.
Santiago? Did you guys catch that?
Oh,
Yes.
the ride, yes.
When the way they occupied the station and then waved people in for free.
Yeah.
That is called a fair strike.
is
It has a
awesome.
very long history.
There you go.
And also check out Matt and I's TMBS video reviewing people's subway hopping techniques. You remember that?
Is
That
this
was
a thing? I have to
so
find this.
so there was some local. Actually, it was really disgusting. This local news. I don't remember which one in New York. They went out and they found people hopping turnstiles to shame them.
No.
Oh yeah, that was disgusting.
Oh, it was so disgusting. And what was actually, and it was fun because, it was like some people, it was depressing, like they hid their faces and it was disgusting. But it's also New York, so you had a lot of like, who the fuck are you?
Right. Good.
Who are you? Are you a cop? Are you a cop? Who are you? I don't know you. Blah, blah, blah. What they unintentionally did was they showed all of this security footage of different people like jumping. Like basically what we did on TMBS was we reviewed technique. We were like, okay, we got the duck method, got the straight up jump. I will say that whenever I may or may not have done that, I was a jumper.
You're a jumper? I do the door.
Yeah,
I've done
the door. The door barely even counts.
It's like a nice passive way to evade the fare. They can still get you a ticket.
Anything can get you
I got one.
I
fought my way out of it, and I was like, first off, they're expanding this now. They have the money to buy effing ads on the subway being like, oh,
by the way,
Nomiki,
thank you. Very professional. I use the full F word.
I don't know if I'm allowed
and this
to.
is no, you were not supposed to. Okay. And this is the second time that you have.
It's very hard.
Very well done.
I have to put on my TV persona.
I don't think I saw it. Come on.
I don't think I've ever properly sworn on television except for C-SPAN accidentally, and that went a little bit viral.
Wait, where? I
think I remember that
meltdown moment. Yeah.
Oh, but that was great.
I
thought you cursed at that Brian Lamb guy. That would have been funny. It's just that boring. I don't know what's his name. There's something like
it's
one
Brian
of those
Lamb,
I'm sure he's a nice guy, but one of those like random my comedic vision was that you were on one of those like, good morning, welcome to C-SPAN. Nomiki Konst is with us. You're calling on the Democrat line from Cleveland City, and then Nomiki's like, what the fuck? And then they're just like, whoa. I think I love is that even if you did curse one of those guys out, they'd still be like, well, all right, quite spirited. Let's get back to the phone lines.
Best poker face ever.
Oh, yeah.
Not play poker with that man.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Brian Lamb would be the worst person to play poker with.
Brian Lamb probably has like 50 mil stashed from poker winnings. Probably just like, hey, you're like, I know you're bluffing.
The most inscrutable host of all time.
Am I?
Has he ever broken his face?
I have never. You know what? Not only have I never
Google.
seen him break his face, I literally used to, and extremely immature of me, I used to watch montages of people prank calling C-SPAN.
Why is that immature? I thought you were prank calling.
Well, no comment. But I used to watch montages of people prank calling C-SPAN, and like he just never. He would just be like, "Seems like a prank call." It's like zero satisfaction.
He's like, "Is this really Barack Obama?"
No,
okay, Michael.
Yeah, right. He's just like, there's Michael Brooks with the black nationalist Obama impression. Oh, okay. You go back to the lines. You're calling from New Jersey on the independent line. Fluoride's killing all of us, Brian. All right. What do you think about that? Is fluoride killing all of us? Next. That guy actually is super admirable. I didn't realize how cool he was until we started breaking that down.
You should invite him on as a guest.
It's like, what do you think about that,
There's
Brian?
no chance he would do that.
It's like, yeah.
Not let him.
That'd be great. He's like,
if I
can stay for the post game and do a bad segment.
If I get anywhere near an opinion, I burst into flames.
I'd be like, all we're asking, no political opinions, just teach us how to have a straight face when we're doing call-ins.
Right.
Be like, I lose my temper. I snap at people when they call in. You know, maybe not you. I didn't. When I had a serious show, I never.
No, definitely him.
Yeah, definitely Michael.
I snap at, whatever. I snap at people. I don't know if I snap at people. I think I maybe don't have an unending, infinite supply of patience.
Yeah,
that's how I'd put it too.
You know what I watched? I was watching because I was watching a Zizek clip recently, and it was great from this old Vice profile, and he was like, what I like to do is I like to start like a debate 5 minutes early, and so that even if someone comes on time or they're only 2 minutes late, they feel a little bit guilty. And the guy's like, why do you want people to feel guilty? He goes, so they don't ask stupid, annoying questions. And I was just like, go.
That's brilliant.
I loved it.
That's really funny. Oh, man.
Back to the old fare hopping, shall we say, the individual fare strike that we've all carried out on an individual basis. People got really mad at me when I tweeted about getting a ticket for fare evasion. I was like, oh, hey, I just got a ticket in the Morgan Avenue station. If you're there, watch out. There's cops hiding around the corner. People got so mad at me. They're like, why? Pay the fare, Jamie.
What?
They made it all about me. And I was like, okay, nerds. First of all, it's not about me. It's about warning other people. Second of all, public transit should be free.
Agreed.
It's a human right, the freedom of movement. I'm not going to apologize for that.
Jamie at the Morgan Street stop. Wait, did people actually really get?
I got like ratioed.
Are you
By
serious?
who? Wait, can we find this tweet and let's bring it back to life? Let's fight that off.
And let me just say this: if you ratioed Jamie for warning people about cops being at the Morgan Street stop, shame on you. You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Get off Twitter.
That is the most like, pay your fare.
Maybe they're not from New York. I feel like some people who are
incidentally,
outside of New York don't really understand the criminal justice issues related to this, the fact that like they keep raising the fares and the service just gets worse. I mean, I went home the other night. The signs don't even match. Like now they have these signs and they're like, to get on the N train, you have to go to the bottom platform. I'm like, number one, there is no bottom platform. Number two, like, where am I going? I don't know how to get home. Can you imagine being a tourist in the
Number
city?
two, where am I going?
I don't know.
I appreciate all the flat screens they're installing
Right.
that occasionally show like a timetable, but for like 90% of the time you look at them, it's just an advertisement for something.
Yeah,
exactly.
And holograms. My station was shut down for 2 years, which was great. They opened it up. Subway still doesn't work. Still not running normal times. But we have like freakish holograms at the Astoria at the 30th Avenue stop. It's not a real hologram. It's just like this virtual.
Is it Wolf Blitzer?
It is. They're doing the debate live from the subway station.
Oh my God! It's like live from the subway station. The same healthcare question again.
This conversation.
Live
How
from
do we
the
pay for it?
Yeah, how do we pay for it?
to
From the
answer-
subway's question. Wait, Matt, what do you want to show us real
Well,
quick?
this is an all-time tweet by Majority Report producer Dorsey Shaw. Retweeted Liz
this is
Fair
so good.
asking, "What are these 3 new super tall, super skinny buildings in NYC?" And Dorsey responds, "They're giant filing cabinets used for money laundering."
Basically.
Almost literally true.
That's absolutely
I
perfect.
thought she lived in Chicago. I guess she moved
Who is Liz Fair?
since Exile in Guyville. Oh my God.
Who is she?
Legendary, great musician from the 90s. And she's still around, but she had a very iconic album called Exile in Guyville in
I
94.
really like her account. It's Fizz Lair, not Liz Fair. That's very funny.
Why did people complain at you?
I don't know.
That's
But
so
to
pathetic.
answer everybody's questions, you work at the Majority Report. Don't you make enough money? No, I don't. I work part-time at the Majority Report, and I spend the rest of my time doing organizing work that I don't get paid for,
Right.
and working on my podcast, which I love very much, but doesn't make me that much money yet. So
They think, I mean, I get this too, like even if, there's a Google, you Google your name and it's like, salary, legs, whatever they do to women.
feet.
Legs.
But
Always
I found
feet.
this
I think
website.
everybody- yeah.
It's disgusting.
Jesus
Especially if you
Christ.
go on Fox News, there's like a whole leg section. There's an account that zooms in on your legs and there's a montage. I got into Google Alert one day. I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with this, but
The foot people are comrades, though. Remember when they proved that nude wasn't of AOC because the Wiki Feet people are like, the feet don't match. We've studied her feet extensively.
Wait, I
Not
didn't know
even
this.
close.
Not even close.
Yeah.
I've been looking at Puerto Rican women's feet online for decades. Let me tell you.
It is a thing now. I'll get like tagged. Google alert of my foot. They went through my Instagram from like 15 years ago.
Yeah, I just know it from doing this job when I used to like have to look up Fox and Friends clips on YouTube.
The person on
like
Nomiki's
there's somebody
Instagram.
who just goes through Fox and Friends, and for any time like
Yep.
like women have legs out, they just clip that part. It's weird.
And there's music. It's
Jesus
creepy. I don't know
Christ.
how we got here. Oh, in terms of pay, because they also will say you make $5 million
But I
a
don't-
year.
Maybe I
Not
should
on
be able-
YouTube, people.
But I
Maybe
don't
I
know.
should monetize the foot pics somehow.
But number one, you could make $5 million a year and still be warning your fellow citizens.
Right.
I mean, you
Exactly.
guys, that's just such a like. Why do you want to be a snitch?
Are you sure
I don't
those weren't
get it.
libertarians? Just
They might have been.
No.
yeah.
No, I got into it with some of them because
They're the
I
type of
can't help
people
myself.
who are like,
and
Why are you criticizing
definitely
Pete
were.
Buttigieg?
Yeah.
And they're
one
following
of them,
you?
Yeah.
The most galaxy brain take that I saw from this was that I am a Marxist and yet I feel entitled to the fruits of other people's labor for free. And they're talking about like the people who work at the MTA.
To be fair, Brendan was drunk when he wrote that.
Like, buddy.
Yeah, Brendan was just like, she feels she got a right to the conductor's work. It's bullshit.
Oh man.
She's going to some friggin' I'm a
Got the
goth
last ones.
Maoist party. Meanwhile, she's stealing from the conductor.
That is not how it works, folks.
I like Brendan's new alter ego. Let's play some. So let's play a little bit of sound, then we'll go to the fun half. Let's just do these pair of AOC and Ilhan Omar reaffirming why they've endorsed Bernie Sanders. So when is he going to? Do you know when he's going to Detroit with Rashida?
I think, isn't it this weekend?
Is it this weekend? Yeah.
I don't want to say that and like screw it up.
I'm pretty sure. Because it's been like actually officially put out on her social media accounts.
I mean, it's not hard to figure this out.
The same research skills that led you to look up Nomiki's feet on Instagram could be used to discover an endorsement date.
Bernie.
So $5 million a year, huh? I had no idea.
Yeah, neither did I.
Jesus.
Amazing. Well, they are. I mean, the funeral is taking place, and I saw them at the funeral, and that doesn't mean they can't jump on a plane, but.
Wait for Elijah
Cummings, yeah.
Oh, did we miss the clip? I should have asked about this. There's a hysterical clip. I don't know who the gentleman is. We have it? Of the guy skipping McConnell? All right, yeah, we'll get to that later. All right, here is AOC. And, ooh, they don't like to hear this on MSNBC. Ooh, this is painful. Oh, how dare she be committed to her political commitments. Ooh.
These endorsements are part of the work that we have to do in the House. Very frequently, someone will say, oh, we can't pass a Green New Deal. We don't have support for that. Oh, Medicare for All is, quote unquote, unfeasible because we may not have support in certain areas of the House. Well, if we want to change that, then we need to be changing the math of the House. And we need to be protecting those folks who are leading and are taking political risks in order to serve the people of the United States of America. And so my work, first and foremost, informs the other work that I do to organize the electorate. But it is important to acknowledge that in order to pass a transformative agenda for working class Americans, we got to have the numbers and we got to have the leadership in place. And so we have to play in both if we're really going to change this country and if we're serious about that.
Absolutely. And here is Ilhan Omar. She was at, this is the Progressive Caucus Action Fund. And, there's also a clip, which I guess we didn't pull with Mehdi Hassan, where she really made this point very strongly as well. And she actually even acknowledged her own gut check when he told her that she was basically singing a little bit of a different tune a year ago. This is Ilhan Omar.
I believe that Senator Bernie Sanders has complete fluency in the struggles of working people. He has been someone who has fought alongside and for marginalized people in this country for many years. And I believe that he and I share value and a vision for the America that we all deserve, and we'll do everything that we can to build the movement that will get us there.
Now, Miki, what do you think about these endorsements?
I think they're, they came at a perfect moment when the press was really trying to shove it down our throats that there was no electoral path for Senator Sanders, which is abundantly, false. It's just, the polls are all over the place. They're not, it's not, one day like Pete Buttigieg is winning Iowa, which makes absolutely no sense. So it came at a really good moment. At the end of the day, they're going to need folks to turn out in states like Iowa, New Hampshire, and I believe that it's pretty tight. I don't think there's a big margin there. I think they oversample older voters. All the polls pretty much oversample older voters, and some of them are a little bit more skewed. He needs the young voters, new voters to register, and I think that these endorsements from the squad are motivating to young people, and and hopefully there'll be surrogates that can run around the country and not just campaign in their districts but other districts, encouraging young people to register to vote, encouraging young people to get active however they can, and tell their friends and families. Of course, tell your parents. That's, I think, key. Get your parents. Have a talk with your parents. I saw somebody push this out on Instagram. Have an intervention about Biden, even an intervention about other candidates too.
Tell them you're not coming home for Thanksgiving unless they vote for Bernie.
Oh, my parents would be happy about that.
Really great.
They're like, wait, what?
Finally get a little bit of breathing room.
Exactly.
Jesus Christ. What are we going to hear about? The Greek sovereign debt crisis again? finally I can eat some friggin' cranberry sauce.
Real story.
Guess what?
I had to like intervene with my family. We had a conversation yesterday. Can I mention this?
Yes, you can.
So my grandfather passed away recently, and
Sorry.
Thank you. He was in his 90s. The last of my grandparents used to live with me. I didn't know that there was a memorial because I was not shared on an email list. Yeah, so you think, okay, so you're like, oh, that's pretty effed up. Except the reason I was not on that email list is because many of the members of that list are Republicans. Some are born-again Christians who also believe that Obama was a Muslim. And so when that whole thing was happening, I was very vocal about Obama not being a Muslim and other conflicting stories that would be
and doing like the whole
Not that there's anything wrong
double
with that.
step, right? The
Right,
double
of
step.
course.
It's a lie, and it's not a problem. And I'm picturing like a bunch of like I mean I go to my own ultra stereotypes. So like it's like some guy owns like a Greek diner being like, no, you don't understand, Nomiki.
I saw it on the internet.
I saw it on the internet.
They got it in
and
email
you are walking
chains.
around talking about feminize. Meanwhile, you want to live in Obama's Saudi Arabia. She's crazy.
Right.
Take her off of the email list.
So they took me off. And so I miss all these important things like
Wow.
my grandfather's memorial.
I just want to say we didn't pull this because we didn't want to talk about the same subject again. But John King played those same clips of AOC and Ilhan on CNN and ran some footage of Fly Girls from In Living Color in the background.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm kidding.
I don't know at this point. I really can't.
Yeah, he was the guy who said that, hey, these are urban.
I remember.
They urban.
Tweeted
Doesn't
that one
matter.
out. And his fake apology.
Yeah, I remember that. Like, don't take me out of context.
It's not.
That was the best. He's like, don't even try it.
I'm surprised there wasn't
There is
pushback.
no way you're going to get me on that one. Anyways.
And it worked.
We're going to talk to Amy Klobuchar soon about a non-urban electorate.
Staplers and all the things she throws at her rural staff.
There's a lot more room for them to run. Okay, we're going to do plugs and then we're going to go to the fun half. But Nomiki, there's a new project you're working on.
Oh, yeah. Let's
talk
do this.
about it.
I was told by someone following me that I have to hide my headphones. Okay. Someone texted me that they're watching. Is this better, audience? My headphones have been hidden.
Wow. Everyone's a critic.
I know. I got an alert on that.
An alert?
Yeah, just hide your headphones.
Jesus Christ.
Not from my family, actually. So yeah, very, very, very exciting.
It was the school in Indonesia. Anyways, cover your headphones.
Cover your headphones. This is really exciting. So I'm part of this coalition of women who many have run for office in the past. Some are in office. Some have lost office or have run and not succeeded. And then we have activists and labor leaders and policy leaders and organizers and artists. But we're all progressive women, and we've come together to start a new organization called Matriarch. And it's a group that is supporting working class progressive women across the country running for Congress, starting with Congress. And the goal of the group is to fill a space because we think that economic justice and intersectional issues are not prioritized when supporting women running for office. But also, if you're a working woman running for office, you most likely don't have access to wealth. You don't have wealth. It's very hard to raise the money so that other institutional organizations take you seriously. So we want to help really from the ground level, a lot of these candidates, help recruit candidates to run who have labor backgrounds, who are connected to their communities. But we also think that more women, we see what the squad did clearly in just, a year, but more women who come from, these backgrounds, who are working class, who face real obstacles, who are in the front lines of every injustice, that they can run on those issues. They connect to their communities more. They're more electable. And of course, they're more courageous once they enter Congress. And so if we want to get to parity, if we want to prioritize, women's related issues and more, we have to start talking about economic justice, criminal justice, climate justice, labor rights. These are the issues that have been fought for and led by many women, often on the front lines early on, but they're also on the front lines, especially women of color, especially, immigrant women, undocumented women. They're really being hit first. And so we're seeking candidates. We just launched minutes ago. So go to matriarchpac.com. If you want to throw in a few bucks, that helps, because we're trying to raise money to help these candidates early on, and help them in other ways too. So there's a lot of infrastructure support we're going to do that, it's not just that it's hard to run for office when you're working class. It's hard when you're taking on the establishment, because they'll often throw other things at you. So we're really excited, very, very excited.
Wow.
And I just tweeted it out too. Matriarch, I think that the Twitter is @matriarch.org, so follow them.
So it's like Emily's List if they were actually good.
That's it.
That's a great interpretation.
Emily's List, not good. There's a lot of problems there.
Matriarch.
This is my comment, not yours.
Matriarch organization. We want to get this to blow up. We're taking nominations. So if you have if you know someone who should be running for Congress, there's still some time. We'd love to consider them. And then after the new year, we're going to release our endorsement list. And it's just an awesome group of people. So share, tweet, throw some bucks at us, because we got to get these candidates some early money, ground support money. Thank you for the plug.
Awesome. Check out become a member of the Majority Report today, majority.fm/become a member. That's how this whole thing happens. That's why we're here today. That's why Sam is able to sleep off a hangover right now, or potentially still be arguing with somebody at the blackjack tables about the yield curve on Social Security.
Living the dream.
Living the dream. Do you see? Check out MajorityReport.fm. Also go to justcoffee.coop. Fair trade tea, coffee, or chocolate. Get the Majority Report blend. On the Michael Brooks Show this past Tuesday, we had on John Idarola and Artesia Balthrop. This coming Tuesday, jam-packed show. Crystal Ball. Harvey K is going to be in studio, and then I'm just about to record an interview with Kshama Sawant after this. I'd like, in general, if people can, to support her. She's an incredibly important politician. She's done amazing and courageous work on the Seattle City Council. She's one of these through lines.
Totally.
Whether we're talking about the Chicago teacher strikes, so on, she helped open the door to where we are at now. I'm very eager to interview her, but I'm, in this case, it's very action oriented. I want to see what we can do to help secure her reelection to the city council. She's extremely important. That's all on Tuesday. Patrons already have the full interview I just did with Adolph Reed Jr. The man is a genius. I was incredibly humbled by how much time he gave me. Talked about the managerial class, essentialism, and neoliberalism, touching on everything from the 60s through the 90s to South Africa to get where we needed to go. Adolph Reed is amazing. That interview is for patrons first. And next week, my interview with Slavoj Žižek will be for patrons first. That was a lot of fun. Patreon.com/TMBS. Get the whole thing. Subscribe on YouTube. Michael Brooks Show on YouTube. We're about to be at 84,000 subs. Want to get to that 100,000. And very close to our first 3,000 patrons. So thank you. And also snag your tickets. November 23rd, World Cafe, Philadelphia, live show. Artesia Balthrop, Emma Vigeland, Crystal Ball. It's going to be so good, folks. So good. It's going to be really good.
How do you pick the cities?
That's a good question. I don't know. Me and my agent just talk about it.
It's nice.
Honestly, a lot of it is patron lobbying.
He's listening.
I listen. I'm listening.
He's connected. He's connected to the folks. You're just like a modern day Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah,
going around doing the live events.
Yeah, exactly. Then me and Miller are going to Philly.
Yes, exactly.
Gonna be at World Cafe.
Although he's like a socialist now too. I don't know what's going on with Bill O'Reilly.
What was that? Wasn't he like tweeting out like favorable stuff? Or it wasn't like favorable. It was just like, sort of like, so but if I understand correctly, Bernie's saying the whole system doesn't work. We need to change capitalism.
Yeah, Bernie wants a Green New Deal because capitalism is destroying the world, is what he tweeted out. But I think he meant it in like scare quotes. I think he left out some scare
he left out some square.
This, but unironically, as the kids say.
Yeah, this, but actually. Jamie, what's up?
So I've got a few things going on. October is a very busy month for us goth socialists. So this week in the free episode of the Antifada, we have not one, but two guests First, we have on Sham Khanna, editor of Commune Mag, to give us a little preview of what's in issue number 4, as well as a breakdown of Saturday's Bernie Sanders rally from an ultra-left wrecker perspective. Joshua Strawn, half of the darkwave duo Azar Swan, then joins us. We all talk about what the kids are listening to these days. We make some music recommendations, and we talk about the new Azar Swan record and why Billy Joel has better politics than Nick Cave. That one kind of broke my heart as someone who always liked Nick Cave. Then today, Friday, we have a very, very, very...
That's really true?
What?
I don't want to step on the show, but that's fascinating. Billy Joel better than Nick Cave?
Oh, yeah. Billy Joel's
a Cuomo supporter.
Said some real.
I was going to say Billy Joel is.
He said some pretty Antifa stuff in an interview about
maybe
punks
he's
walking around
annoyed
with swastikas. How come you don't beat them with a baseball bat? Nick Cave kind of both sides did a little. He kind of equated the far left and the far right in a way that a lot of goth socialists out there did not appreciate. But I also wasn't that surprised because he's just like this gloomy, poetic preacher man who travels around and sings sad songs. So I don't know what I was expecting from him. But anyway.
It's kind of like Bill O'Reilly.
No.
But Billy Joel is just like Bill O'Reilly. It's a very similar, from the same area of Long Island.
Well,
originally.
Billy Joel had family that died
class.
in concentration camps. So he understands fascism a little bit better, I guess.
This is a real debate happening on the left. There was a party after the Bernie rally in the neighborhood, and we got into some debates over whether or not like violence against Nazis is okay, and I'm just going to leave it at
it's fine.
World War II. I don't know. I mean, like, it just doesn't seem like
it's fine. I don't know why this is even a debate that anybody is having.
Even the Pod Save America guys cheered when Richard Spencer got punched, so I think the debate's not.
I should tell you something.
Also, I mean, Maxime Bernier lost, so
he lost bad
on an Antifa ticket.
Right.
Just always think tactically.
But
that's my answer to everything.
I feel like I should finish
That's about right.
the plug real quick.
We're not going to. We're just going to keep talking over you.
Finish the plug.
It's okay. I'm totally used to it. So today we have a very exciting, I'm excited about it. I haven't even listened to it yet. Episode number 5 of History as a Weapon with Sean KB and Matt Chrisman. And each of these is a 2-parter because they're just that monstrously good. Matt and Sean are diving into the historical materialist trenches once again. On this episode, they address suburbia and its discontents. How has the unique social geography of the United States affected its political and economic development? How are class relations reflected in the built environment? Why did the suburbs arise as a unique solution to social crisis in the post-war era? And what sort of mentalities and ideologies arose out of these milieu? I'm very, very excited about this one, folks. And tonight, if anyone's in town and wants to go to a really fun Halloween party and show and benefit, I am throwing a benefit show at Pecos in Brooklyn, Queens. It's kind of on the borderline. We've got Azar Swan playing, really good darkwave band. It is their record release show. And Hop 1280, they're freaks. They sound like the birthday party. Canal Street Electronics is Mike Burdan from the awesome noise punk band Uniform. We've got DJs. We've got Comrade Barbie making an appearance once again. Comrade Barbie's a very good comrade. Doing a drag performance, and we will be raising money for a really cool mutual aid center in Tijuana called El Comedor, and Contra Viento y Marea is the project it comes out of. It's run totally along autonomous principles. There are no NGOs involved. There's no state involved. They help migrants stay alive while the state is basically trying to murder them. And we ran some interviews with people from there in a recent episode of the Antifada. So I wanted to do something for them. So come out. It'll be fun.
Awesome. Wait, what time?
Doors open at 8. Bands start around 9:30.
Tonight?
Yeah. Dancing till late in the night. If you're looking for something super goth and spooky and Halloween-y to do, come on out, wear a costume. Or if every day is Halloween for you, that's cool too. Come as you are.
Matt Luck.
Tomorrow, hopefully, it's going to be a marathon recording sessions, but I'll be talking about the Salem witch trials in a historical context and how it was basically the Puritans had their charter revoked by England because they were oppressing Quakers too much in the 1680s. And they're like, oh, please give it us back. We'll be on our best behavior. But while that was going on, they killed a bunch of innocent people, accusing them of being witches. And the Mathers
Go
are like,
easy on the Quakers. Oh, this brought put a curse on me.
yeah, the Mathers were like,
Town Square trial.
We need to spin
Yo, I like
this.
that. Tony Soprano Puritan. It's so stupid.
Yeah, so directly after Cotton Mather wrote a book about how actually the evidence they used wasn't so bad, and witches are real, and
I believe
Yes.
and
witches
mistakes
are
were
real.
made though, so you know
Oh,
what.
shit.
Look, not everyone that we killed was an actual witch, but there was one that took my fucking toenail clippings.
Actually, witches were often accused of going after like farm implements and property. That was a big.
This
if
my
your cows
question.
died, you'd blame the local like woman who was annoying you, or like maybe poor.
There is
Without
a
a-
material
well, was-
explanation for this.
Well, was it also even more like, not to step on this either, but it is interesting, like annoying social position, class position, sure, but like was it also correlated with like maybe a couple of women were meeting and talking about changing the way something was done, and then that got transposed? Was that sort of thing happening at all too?
That definitely happened with like Anne Hutchinson a generation earlier, for instance. Like she was
Okay.
accused of being a witch because she was basically like more. Basically, like I don't want to get into antinomian controversy, but eventually, like she had a.
None of us want to do that.
Yeah.
Certainly not.
Sorry,
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, please.
But she had miscarriages.
Indubitably.
Well, like
Yes.
the bad thing is like after she was, speaking out about, her religious views, she had a miscarriage, and they said, yeah, see, she's possessed by the devil.
No, she had the evil eye.
The evil eye.
That's what my family would say.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She has
never
the
heard that.
evil eye. That's why she loves
What does that
Obama.
mean? Who has
We
the-
must get her
taking
off. We have to get her off of the email
My
list,
accent is-
or we will all be cursed.
I don't know what that
Generic Mediterranean salesperson
sounds
accent.
just like a Mediterranean accent.
Oh, whatever.
I'm just kidding.
The evil
Yeah,
eye
no,
is
you
the
should
thing I've
kid,
been
but the-
cultivating in myself for years in an effort to get people to just leave me alone.
That's fine. You just have a
It's-
blue. You can just get. Yeah, you
Check
got
it out.
You're good.
I
You're
got
safe.
2 of them on me. I got one on my ankle at all
Yeah,
times.
You're safe.
It takes, well, hopefully. It's you're taking an energy, it can be good or bad energy, but just the action of taking an energy from other people depletes your energy, can cause
ain't
sickness,
that the
headaches, migraines,
Word. Yep,
dementia.
Definitely. Yes. Absolutely.
Yep. And then there's this thing in Greek. I mean,
I'm
it's
gonna
a
get
lot of
one.
Mediterranean countries where you
Yes, many Mediterranean.
you have someone in your family who can do the thing to get the evil eye off of you, but you can't know when they're doing it. They just need to know where you are. And my uncle does that in our family.
Well, let me just add. Thank you, Nomiki.
It's important
appreciate
information.
All right, we'll see you in the fun half.
That wasn't the fun half?
No, we're already.
Left is best.
Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous, you're a little bit upset, you're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude,
Dude.
you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's a good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy!
Dance, dance, dance. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up! Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Welcome to the fun half. We are all here. It's already been fun. Whoa. Whoa. All right, guys. All right. Which one of you put the evil eye on Nomiki?
Where's my evil eye?
That
We're
is
having a little too much fun.
Do not haze Nomiki with the evil eye.
Do not.
It's
My
terrible.
uncle will be called.
Yeah.
By the way, is anybody watching anything scary? We usually do film recommendations.
Oh, that's a good
Fridays. I've got a TV show that's on Netflix.
All right, let's do it.
It's French, so you have to read the subtitles, but it's
That's an early in the day thing. not into the night.
Total literary hangover.
it's called Marianne, and it is a very good witch sort of TV show.
Marianne, like Williamson?
Marianne. Yeah, it's not about Marianne Williamson.
I would love to watch a non-scary, basically just any movie about Marianne Williamson.
No,
She's
I'd love
still
to
my
watch a
number
reality
two.
show with
Still
her.
my number two choice.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Solidarity. She's a little too pro-Israel for me, but I think we can
I
move
agree.
around
Too
that.
pro-Israel, not clear on healthcare, but I mean,
No, I mean,
I
this
get to.
isn't
By
a
the way,
serious
I can tell you about
conversation.
another person who is like a lot of people's number two or even number one choice, God forbid, who is a little too pro-Israel for me.
Who's that?
Warren likes her Israel. Come on.
Did you hear Hillary Clinton at Elijah Cummings' funeral
Where she
talk
was
about
like-
Israel?
When she was like,
When I first saw Elijah, I thought he was one of the people that worked at my house in Arkansas. But then we ended up working together.
Oh my God.
is that what she said? You know, people whine and complain to this day about the Sanders campaign with Hillary Clinton. And it's like, first he goes, we're not going to talk about your damn emails. Okay, no problem. Let's just get rid. And I agree. It's whatever. It's stupid. But okay, let's just take off a major piece of political ammunition. Then you have no one in their research department went, you know what? Hillary Clinton wrote fondly in her autobiography about prison labor helping out around the governor's mansion.
She literally had slaves.
Those people have the temerity
To be like, Bernie Sanders wasn't nice or helpful enough.
Like that is
Unbelievable.
literally the one exception to making slavery illegal. It's like, oh, except as a punishment. Like what?
By the way,
Raved about it.
How is that allowed?
by the way,
Character
Because they
building.
write the laws.
Character building.
and don't even look up what Bill Clinton did with another inmate who did not have mental capacity.
Yes.
But
Tough on crime.
tough on crime.
That criminal.
Tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime, by which I mean God didn't even know he was going to be executed. Bill Clinton executed a man who asked that his final meal be saved for later because he did not understand
not a
the
joke.
concept. Oh, it's 100% not a joke. He did not understand the concept he was going to be being killed. I also just have to say one last tangent. I already talked about this on the show, but I was actually shocked at how sad I was when Elijah Cummings died.
Yeah.
I don't know what. There's just he just had a real. I don't know.
His
his
story was
was
extraordinarily
incredible.
American. Like, if
Yeah.
that's the America we aspire to be, you know, that is the story. I don't think that's the America that clearly we're on the path of I don't even know if we ever were at that point. Like the fact that he was able to build this extraordinary life when his own father was a sharecropper. I mean, it's unusual. It's, you know, he was the I don't know. His funeral was very sad. There were a lot of people who got up on stage and told stories about knowing him in 1968 and college and, been friends with him for 50 years. But the Hillary part really threw me back because, first of all, she was way more charismatic than I've seen her in years giving a speech. But one part, she said, I went on a trip to Israel with Elijah.
Oh, God. Here we
and
go.
there's a lot of biblical references because of Elijah. But she went on a trip because he had an organization that he started. It was a cultural exchange program. It was odd. It felt like almost like a plug to Israel.
Of course it was.
Yeah.
That's always awkward. It's always awkward when I show up to family thing, like at a temple or whatever, and they somehow manage to work in Israel. Right. And I'm just like trying to be nice and show up for my family. I'm like, come on, guys.
Do they really do that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
May I ask what your background is? Your family's
Eastern
background?
European Jews.
Okay, so you're Jewish. It's not like you're in a born-again Christian household where my family likes to drop Israel, and I'm like, it's occupation. I mean, it's their form of like the rest of the world will be eliminated when the doomsday comes, and we're going to take that land.
Right. Exactly.
You think we're not onto you? We figured it out. You don't think that the Jews know this?
No. It's like they expect that we'll die, and then they'll take our houses, which is ironic. Speaking of how the place was founded, but let's do a few more recommendations before we play this clip. All right, Marianne.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm the worst guest ever. Sorry.
It's fine. And wait, Brendan, are you going to come back to give your recommendation? I felt bad because you were standing waiting. Come, give it.
Come back, Brendan.
No, come on, man.
Come
on.
Come back.
Okay, I watched Funny Games last night, which is. Have you guys seen this movie?
Yeah, it's brutal.
I can't watch that.
It's a shot-for-shot remake of a Austrian movie from 1997. And
Australian, I think, right? Or is it Austrian?
Austrian, I think.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Maybe it is. But it's about a really rich
Austrian
family of Naomi Watts and Tim Roth that go off to North Shore, Long Island, to their country house, and Michael Pitt and his friend do a home invasion and have been at all these really swanky houses and just terrorize them, and it's really intense.
They have it's a pretty tough day. Jamie, pick.
Nothing's more disturbing than reality these days. I gotta say, if you really want to be horrified, just stare into this rectangle of doom for an hour and that'll do the trick. But if you want to escape from the horrors of reality to a world that's nice, maybe check out Midsummer if you haven't yet. I thought it was really good. And I did an episode on it with Leslie Lee from Struggle Session, and he thought it was good too. Same director as Hereditary, which is also a very good, very scary movie that you should watch if you haven't yet, from last year. I've been watching a lot of Succession lately, I gotta say. That's not like
no, that's a horror
spooky,
show.
but it is. It does show the horrors of. It shows how capitalism is bad for the haute bourgeoisie too,
and driven by children.
It's like see, nobody's happy in this scenario, even the people who are supposed to be, because they're on top. So maybe let's not and say we did.
Nomiki.
What have I been? I watched The Laundromat. And
how was that?
I thought it was extraordinary.
I want to see
And
that.
I watched it with someone from Europe who I was spending who was in town for 2 weeks, and I was spending the whole 2 weeks explaining why I hated New York's real estate industry and running around being like, my favorite restaurant closed, and I was having meltdowns with them, and they're like, why are you so upset? I'm like, because New York is disappearing, and it discusses, and then I went into the oligarchs moving their money into New York real estate to hide their money, and how offshore bank accounts work, and the idea of American capitalism. And it's a very it's happening all over the world, but it is the lens of New York. I see everything through that lens now. And we watched the movie together, and he's like, oh, now I get it. I understand it all. And it was way more entertaining when they did it than when you did it. And you had meltdowns on the street when your Thai restaurant closed and 5 other places all on one day.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I got to watch that. I don't have any scary recommendations. Actually, you know what? It's a comedy show, but it has some horror adjacent, I would say, is Righteous Gemstones. And
Where's
that
that?
show,
Oh, that's great.
That show is Danny McBride.
Yeah.
That's his new show.
Is that on Netflix?
It's on HBO.
HBO.
Yeah.
Oh, I lost my HBO subscription.
That show
I was stealing it.
is basically flawless. I mean, yeah, I don't have enough good things to say about that show. Even the way it balanced, even like it also had a lot of heart to it. I don't know. It was that show blew. I expected it to be funny. I think Danny Bride's is funny. Whatever, like it's a good cast, but I did not expect it to be like even succeed like on dramatic terms. That show is amazing.
Well, this is a critique that they made on Chapo that I agree with, which is like it's based on the Falwell family, right? The story about the picture and just the family itself, and the amount of heart and charisma that these actors bring to these roles, it is completely more than the utterly boring ghouls in the Falwell family deserve.
Oh, you have to totally, I would say by the end of even episode 1, because of even like some actually really bad stuff they do, but still takes like physical ballsiness, I totally let that go. Like, I walked in being like, oh, they're making fun of the Falwells. And then by the end of episode 1, it's like, well, this just isn't going to be plausible or deny, or like, it just isn't going to make sense if I think of these people as like they're terrible, but they're definitely not them. So this is like its own like magical realist like mega church family, and we're just going to go with that.
Well, what it is
and that's way better that way.
You have the McBride trilogy now, and I think this is another point they made on Chapo. But you have the like sort of working class Eastbound and Down show.
Yeah.
You have the professional middle class vice principals, and then the upper crust, which is the righteous gemstones. And when you think about it that way, it's in an amazing body of work. The final scene of it, I think, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think is perfect, and it's so good. I almost like kind of wish they weren't coming back for a second season.
Whoa.
They landed. It was a perfect, like, you know, like I thought like the first season of Succession was pretty mediocre, and then the second season like took off. This was like out of the gate.
Did you guys see The Family? The one that was on Netflix about... I know. I thought it was same thing, but the idea, the concept, the background, I mean...
I've been trying to start something like that for a while.
Oh my God. I forgot my biggest recommendation lately, which is the Joker movie. Oh my God.
You saw that?
It is so great. I like it so much. And leftists, don't let the liberals and the right take this movie away from you. There is a lot of leftist stuff in it, and you should be happy to watch it.
Rad. When did you see it?
Very recently. I saw it with a couple friends who maybe didn't appreciate the movie as much as I did. I don't want to give any spoilers, but there's a lot of class rage, a lot of class issues in the movie that deserves to be explored.
What's the deal with the stairs, the Bronx stairs? Why is that? I sort of tuned it out on
He
Twitter.
dances down them.
Okay, so that's
in a very pivotal scene to Gary Glitter.
Oh, the Gary Glitter song, the only Gary Glitter song.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then liberals were like horrified that they would like give Gary Glitter money by putting his music in the movie, as if Gary Glitter is not doing fine already. For those who don't know, he is a convicted pedophile.
He's a bad guy.
Really bad guy.
Not a good guy.
But like the Joker,
very tough deal.
Isn't a great. I mean, the Joker's a complicated guy, but like you're not supposed to want to be like him. So
we have Dave Rubin thinking that the Joker just needs to read Jordan Peterson. So
I want all of you guys to see this movie so that we can talk about it.
I'm going to read One I Am
and listen to the struggle session episode, because Leslie is the king on this stuff.
Can we get that Peterson clip? Because I'll read an I Am. Bullprog, Elon and Bernie are holding a rally in Minneapolis on Sunday, November 3rd. By the way, Bullprog is the person who made the song.
The MR Fun.
The MR Fun.
That's awesome.
Elon,
Love it.
Oculus is a great psychological horror flick.
It's also that new place, that new subway stop, right?
I think so.
Which is also freaky.
Oh, okay. This is sad. Let's just do this real quick. Tomcat, hi guys. Can you have a shofar for my dead stepdad, Matthew, who passed away last month?
Oh.
Yes, certainly. He was a fine man, loved his boxing. He traveled the world over his life, had stories to tell, even though he ultimately didn't pull through his sudden illness. He was looked after by our NHS. I feel like he was able to live, and the care he received, how much they tried to save him at the end, is why it's important to have open borders, free healthcare for all in our society. Thanks. Here's the shofar. Oh. Rest in peace. I feel like we, between all of the shows, have done such a job on Dave Rubin that he literally has fled to the blaze. And I think like we still use Dave Rubin's sound drops and interstitials on both shows just because it's funny.
Yeah.
But I haven't been inspired to make fun of Dave Rubin for
No.
a long time. It's sort of like you
Where's
just
the challenge?
but it's also you just can't recreate the magic of something. It's like sometimes a
Yeah.
relationship is over. Sometimes, a film doesn't mean what it once did.
You need to go your separate ways and get mysterious to each other again.
Exactly. And I think, as they always say, distance makes the heart grow fonder.
Although the Marianne thing
And-
was interesting.
Well, that was his last moment.
Didn't he do Tulsi also? I'm not surprised with that.
Yeah, but Tulsi...
They agree on everything.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
He was just
did we
like,
talk about
he was
Tulsi?
like, isn't it sort of like they want open borders? And Tulsi was just like, I look at it as a soldier. And he was like, wow, you look at it as a soldier? And she was just like, I look at it as a soldier who posts workout videos. Anyways, this is Dave Rubin, though, talking about something far more important than the presidential race. Finally, the answer to the Joker and a rekindling of my love for making fun of Dave Rubin.
Guy, but anyone that lives in a sensible way that wants society to function and that wants people to be helped. I mean, look, I've got Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life right over there. The point of the book, I mean, the subtitle is An Antidote to Chaos. What the Joker needed was an antidote to chaos, to bring a little order to his life, not be victim, right? The whole movie is about a victimhood mentality. This guy's a victim, and then he spreads his victimhood mentality, coupled with his psychological conditions, across society. So the media tried to frame it as this movie was going to inspire all these alt-right, white nationalist, mean, racist people, but the book is, the movie is actually the reverse of that. It's the reverse of that if you think the Joker's a bad guy. If you think the Joker's a bad guy, then you...
I'm sorry.
See, even Dave Rubin gets it.
Wait, I don't know if he gets it, Jamie, because
No.
it sounds to me like he's actually saying, like, if you're a white nationalist and you're out there working out, living a productive life, the Joker blaming people. Am I wrong here? Is that what
The
he's saying?
Joker is blaming society for how he's treated, which is a good thing.
No,
Dave Rubin thinks it's a bad thing.
I understand that, but I'm saying, is he actually directly juxtaposing the Joker not taking responsibility with white nationalists taking responsibility? Am I misinterpreting this? Let's watch this. This is
victim, right? The whole movie is about a victimhood mentality. This guy's a victim, and then he spreads his victimhood mentality, coupled with his psychological conditions, across society. So the media tried to frame it as this movie was going to inspire all these alt-right, white nationalist, mean, racist people, but the book is, the movie is actually the reverse of that. It's the reverse of that if you think the Joker's a bad guy. If you think the Joker's a bad guy, then you would never want any of those things. You would want people to take responsibility for your life and the rest of it.
I see.
Guy.
Oh, okay.
But
I
anyone...
see what he's doing. Okay, yeah. You would want, I see. Okay, yep. I get it.
Yeah, he's agreeing
saying
with
that-
me that the Joker is a leftist movie. He just thinks it's bad.
And he's doing the Jordan Peterson cop out about it's the same thing.
The Joker needs to clean his room.
It needs to clean his room. Yeah, the white nationalists are playing victim.
Also, he's a vegetarian, which is why he's
vegetarian.
also
All right,
messed up.
guys, this is maybe the most horrifying book cover I've ever seen in my
What
life.
on earth?
This looks like a
Is
joke.
this
That's not a
actually
cursed
real
image
thing?
at all.
There's no way this is a real
I mean, I'll look it up on. Yeah.
With meat only
This has to
in
be a joke.
toxicology. The book contains the most important information.
This is a joke.
Nuggets. And his daughter. Oh, and he's behind his daughter. Okay.
I'm looking off in the distance at Michaela. My daughter is a fantastic piece of ass.
It looks like a Chuck Tingle book.
There's no way this is true. This cannot be real.
No, it's actually for free on Kindle Unlimited right now.
This is a actual cover of an actual book. Are you serious?
Here's the page. You can get it on.
Ooh,
either,
wait, let's see the ratings.
You can get it. Well, it's only got 7 ratings so far because it might not be out yet.
Guys, this is a cover that someone put out with their approval and design for real?
Graphic design is my
I
passion.
don't mean to be analyzing her breasts, but it seems like that one on the left is not in the actual. They didn't even.
It looks like the
proper
bra was
art.
photoshopped on.
Yeah, exactly. I don't mean to
Right.
I was out sunbathing with my daughter, and we were talking
That's just
about
what
how
happens.
eating only raw pig meat increases libido.
Michaela's
And
only
then we
eating
realized-
salami.
Yeah, Michaela eats salami exclusively. And then we realized we should probably superimpose a bra over her breasts.
Oh wow! Looks like we got to read the copy here.
Can I just say really quick? Finally, an appropriate use of the word "yikes." Can I just say before we do this? I had to read some of Jordan Peterson's actual book for my book. And there's this great section where he explains why he left Freud and realized there were more answers in Jung. And he was just like, and to his credit, he used to care about important stuff. He used to be obsessed with the arms race and the idea of there being a nuclear Armageddon, right? And he said, and he goes, and he has this whole thing about how one of his cousins when he was a little kid, and she was the most beautiful girl I had ever seen, and all this stuff. And then he said that he had a dream where they were sitting in a living room together, and they were watching TV or something, and then an atom bomb exploded, and woke up. And then he's like, and the Freudians kept trying to tell me it was sexual, but it wasn't. It was about the apocalypse.
It was actually just my cousin on the bed jumping next to me, trying to wake me up after a very long night.
All right, let's read this book.
Yeah, we need to read this copy. So,
and we're I just want to keep saying this. We're really thinking that this is real. That this is
on Amazon's website.
I'm sorry.
right
There's
now.
a podcast interview with Ivor Cummins.
So,
that's not a name.
This is a joke.
This book contains the most important
podcast interview with Ivor Cummins. This is a joke.
Who's that? I don't know. Who
I
that
don't
is.
know. This is a fake. This has to be fake.
Digesting depression.
This has to be fake.
This book contains the most important information nuggets by Dr. Jordan Peterson and his daughter Michaela Peterson regarding their carnivore diet or their, quote, lion diet. For every paperback sold, Michaela and her father, Dr. Jordan Peterson, they put Dr. Jordan Peterson in every single line, will receive $1 directly. This book offers 11 chapters of revised transcripts and blog posts by Michaela Peterson on how they cured their disease, depression, and health issues with the carnivore diet, and how ill people could start this kind of eating as well. That is gross.
If this is real,
not doctors.
I mean, if this isn't real, Amazon
I
should
really
take
think
down.
it might be a fake.
I mean, they
thing.
really do believe all of these things.
Yeah, no, I think this is real. That's is
far
Be like,
out.
you
It's
weren't
independently
depressed,
published,
you were
of course.
broke,
Check
and then
out
you made money off of
one
lying.
of the reviews.
1 star, 5 stars. Okay.
Oh, wow. The first review, not happy. Another pseudo-scientific fad diet, riding on the coattails of our father Jordan Peterson, a Canadian psychologist who somehow became an internet celebrity for refusing to use gender pronouns of college students.
That is an accurate summation of his career. Yes.
Michaela Peterson is pushing just what the world needs, another unhealthy fad diet, claiming to be a nostrum from maladies. Yeah, exactly. Got it. Did it right. Okay, this is better. 5 stars.
Such important information.
I have been following Michaela and Jordan Peterson regarding their carnivore diets for quite some time. It's a controversial approach due to the prevailing beliefs that eating red meat is detrimental to human health and that a plant-based diet is optimal. I acknowledge that the results for the Petersons are largely anecdotal. However, the evidence is growing across a larger population that a meat-only diet is largely beneficial.
In a certain sense.
These people are all going to have major health
Wonderfully
problems.
comedic.
For more background, see meatheals.com. In addition, I belong to several carnivore meat-only Facebook groups. Hello, Mark Zuckerberg. Where members try the diet and report their results. Many of them have been very compelling, including a weight loss, I don't doubt that, a relief from depression and mental fog, and addressing type 2 diabetes and autoimmune conditions.
That's not true at all.
Overall, the most diet...
Say, baby, put down that pipe and get my pipe up.
Overall health and vitality. Oh, I'm glad overall health and vitality is up.
Including in the bedroom. That's the most important part.
It's really great to have all this information in one place.
All right, let's
Did
take
Jordan
a call.
Peterson write that?
A great cure for leprosy, too. Did you see that one?
I mean, That's disgusting, actually. Like,
if that's real, that's
Jordan
disgusting.
Peterson's a bad person, and his daughter's bad too.
And that means a lot coming from Matt because he eats mostly McDonald's.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Like
never eat.
Welcome
like
to the McDonald's 3 times a week diet.
Yeah, well-
10-piece nuggets are under $10 for a meal these days, and they're seeing a lot of health and vitality out of that.
And so Michaela and I couldn't keep up with our schedule of reviewing old George Orwell
Also,
essays,
in
so we
Brooklyn-
needed to immediately change our diet base.
In Brooklyn, a large Coke is the same price as a medium Coke, so don't overlook that.
Yeah, so don't overlook that.
Screw you, Bloomberg.
It's the efficient decision and the right decision to get the larger option, and that'll provide you good energy base for recording podcasts.
The prevailing
at
belief
your
that sugar is bad for you in
prevailing
large
belief
amounts
that-
like that is being overturned by more evidence every day.
I've found that I've actually been able to read a lot more books about the Salem witch trials as a result of a higher Coke intake. So don't listen to the politically correct scientists.
Politically correct scientist.
You're calling from a 704 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is James. I'm calling from the Twin Cities.
Hey, James, what's on your mind? What's cooking?
Yeah, so I had two things that I wanted to talk about, and you can pick which one. Healthcare and the clips you guys did yesterday with Mark Zuckerberg. 'Cause I thought they were both interesting things.
Okay, I mean, I think those are both possibly interesting. Is there one that you feel more strongly about?
I guess I think that Mark Zuckerberg.
All right, let's talk about Mark Zuckerberg.
Big tech companies.
All right,
no,
go for
I
it.
was just going to say I think they get a bad rap, but let's do the healthcare one.
Wait,
and
whoa,
that is,
no,
we're doing the tech one now.
No, that's too irresistible. You're the first human being that I've met on Earth that thinks Mark Zuckerberg gets a hard rap. I want to hear it. Let's go for it. Make the case. Other than Nomiki, who's a big fan of Zuckerberg, I've never heard this.
I liked it a whole Twitter thread yesterday about him.
Yeah, Nomiki, you like
not so much
Facebook. Your thoughts?
I just signed in because I wanted to see what he was promoting. Go ahead. I don't
All
want
right, yeah, sorry. All right, James, make the case.
Yeah, it's not so much that he gets a bad rep, but I think, at least during those hearings yesterday, there was a lot of comparing, would you allow posts from white nationalists? Why are you so bad on civil rights? And why don't you fact check politicians, right? That came up during the clips yesterday. But it seems like you're asking them to hold more responsibility than you would ask any other content delivery system.
Well, what are you comparing it to in terms of content delivery system? What do you have in mind that is an unfair comparison to?
So maybe you disagree with this view of Facebook, but if compare it to like the U.S. postal system, let's do a ridiculous example, right?
Well, let's actually. I'm not trying to be difficult, but I think it would help you make your case and us to respond to it if you don't pick a totally ridiculous example. And you're right, that is a totally ridiculous example. So, what would be an example that you think is analogous to Facebook of a platform, which would be your words? I would call it a media company that doesn't have responsibility for its content or the privacy of its users, which I think is way more important, by the way. But go ahead.
Privacy of its users, I'm on board with you. I think that is a legitimate thing where they have failed.
Okay. So what would be an analogous thing?
I'm trying to think that if a television station, well, let me ask this a separate way, right? So if a television Comcast, right? If there was a TV show on its network that aired something totally fictitious, like Election Day is December 25th,
right?
You would hold the show that did that, right, in scorn and contempt and possibly SEC fines.
Right.
But you wouldn't hold Comcast, the delivery system.
Well, I actually disagree with that because I think that you should do things like restoring the fairness doctrine, which actually would account for that type of thing in the media environment. So I Yeah.
And also preventing companies like Fox News and others now that are not listed as news organizations, but entertainment companies. So they get through loopholes by not,
definitely. Yeah. Right. But in this scenario, right, Fox News would be the originator, the presenter, the generator of the content, not your cable companies or DirecTV or however you happen to be viewing the content.
Well, it's
right?
not.
I mean, Facebook isn't making the faulty political ads.
You're saying Facebook is a platform, but Facebook is selling the advertisements the way, it's when you go to Fox News sells the advertisements that would be comparable to a Cambridge Analytica, right? So Fox News, CNN, whatever, can deny ads all the time, and they do regularly. They deny ads from appearing on air for many reasons, factually inaccurate, whatever. So when you look at Cambridge Analytica, they were essentially using the advertising function. They were a vendor of Facebook's, or not a vendor of Facebook's. Facebook was a vendor of theirs, meaning they were purchasing space and using the algorithm tools that they do to basically adjust what kind of content was being spread and the virality of that content, which is something that they were basically taking advantage of the algorithm, which is not comparable to the news, because it's not like if you buy an ad, suddenly you get like 25 versions of Brian Kilmeade talking about, intervening in Libya. Like it's
right. I'd also just want to say too, like, I don't see, I think the actual problem with asking Facebook to fact check is that they're going to outsource, to the extent they even agree to do it, to things like the Atlantic Council, who have who have profound biases that are already reflected in how they've actually disincentivized certain really important investigative sites, or even a site like Telesur, which definitely has a viewpoint, but is a really important source for information of what's happening in Latin America if you care about democratic movements there. So, but the real fundamental thing that I think you're missing is you're just buying into their premise. The reality is they are a media company.
That's right.
The whole way the business model works is, in fact, Nomiki's right. Like selling ads more analogous to the way Fox or CNN sells ads, except with way more precision and sophistication. So they're actually saying that they're just a neutral platform when really they're a media content creator and news provider and in the advertising business. And so the real answer, even before you get to like the things I think, which is like break them up and nationalize them, certainly in Google's case, is you demand that these companies hire thousands of unemployed journalists, fact checkers, and editors, and you actually start having news verticals. That's the only way it's going to work. But why you would buy into their premise, I guess we just disagree, James. And it seems to me like it's dangerous. If you want to keep having them have, look, I think the right critique is how they would take responsibility. And I think that there's a huge liberal obsession with facts and a kind of generic confidence that getting the right information, which I don't have a lot of faith in at all. And I think as that pressure comes, these companies will go to incumbent sources, which are problematic too. So that's an interesting conversation. But just saying, hey man, they're just like, providing a public commons, that's like buying their bullshit. And I don't.
They made they made the Daily Caller, for instance, a fact checker. Right. They didn't have to do that.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. That's not just being a neutral platform.
That's what I'm saying. Well, that's what I mean though with the problem. See, that's why
he's lying to her in that clip when he says, "Oh, we don't pick them. This outside organization picks them." They absolutely do.
But that's also why I wasn't so into AOC's line of questioning, because I think you can, if you just focus on that realm, they will do exactly that type of thing. What you need to do is say, the reality is that you're a media company. Right. We're going to regulate the hell out of you. And meanwhile, incidentally, as Katie Porter said, you can find tons of people to terrorize and pay horrific wages to watch snuff films all day, literally. Right. And even as you say, you're a light mobile company and you don't have the capital and all this other nonsense, you do have capital and you do actually hire real human beings for things that you're legally liable around. You need to hire real human beings for your journalistic functions. And if you want then to become more like a conglomerate and have conservative and leftist programming and hire different people for different verticals, whatever. Right. That's on you, but you need to actually deal with it. and have actual people. And we need to regulate the hell out of it. We do need the fairness doctrine, and all of the other things should come back, not only for cable, but for a platform like Facebook, a media company.
And don't forget that these companies that are working within their Facebook news, which has shifted, I mean, Facebook news, their agenda and their model has shifted like a dozen times in the last, since the media crisis in like 2008, right? And there are people who sit on the boards of Columbia Journalism Review who've been pushing back for a very long time in finding an editorial compromise, essentially. But the companies that they brought to the table also happen to be companies that are investing in pushing through their platform. These are companies that are backed by corporations. These are companies that are are part of the monopoly itself. You see more Fox News clips than you see, the Intercept clips, for instance.
Well, that's what YouTube's answer has been, right? YouTube profits off of and facilitates all of this really toxic content. Now, my answer
Careful.
Well, not,
you're going to be at the bottom of the list.
Probably already are. I have no doubt we already are.
I do not endorse this message, Michael, to protect your interests.
I endorse it for the Majority Report. I would say on Michael Brooks' show channel, we take a way more nuanced view of what YouTube's up to, and I have a lot of respect for the company on TMBS. But the thing is that, but then what they've done now in response to the controversy is they clearly are just pushing more like CNN, CBS, and they're just trying to basically reify and reflect just corporate news, right? And the promise and the challenge and the potential of the internet is way better and way worse. And that needs to be navigated through policy, through nationalization. And I actually think through things like free speech principles. Like I do. I'm not a big, that's because I see the push to just ask companies to moderate this stuff is only going to shrink what is available and just replicate cable on these platforms. So I think that's a big problem. Anyways, James, thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a
lot. Whoa, I hung up by accident. Let's play one more clip. I'll call back in. What do you guys think? Jamie, you're a big fan of Andrew Yang. What do you guys think of this latest Andrew Yang news?
Who on that debate stage is closest to you in terms of your view of the world? Who is closest to you in that sense?
It's funny you asked that. I mean, you'd have to sort of put us all together in some kind of Franken candidate.
No, you must. There must be someone in spirit who's perhaps closest to you.
I will say the only person who's taken me aside and said that we need to really worry about the fourth industrial revolution because it could potentially tear our country apart is Joe Biden.
Joe Biden pulled you aside.
How convenient.
That's an intriguing. Would you serve on a Biden ticket? You said you were open to anything.
I'm definitely open to working with Joe. We've actually talked about it.
So that's Andrew Yang joining us for Post Live.
was the close-up intentional?
That was Desmond Suga, who has the Left is Best YouTube
great.
channel, doing that edit there.
So Andrew Yang, who people in his cult have been whining and complaining and kvetching and whining and complaining and kvetching and whining again, because we've said from the beginning, this guy's not of the left. That a $1,000 payoff a month to accommodate neo-feudalism, that a guy who in almost every single appearance says well, wealth tax might be a good idea, but it's not going to happen. So let's just have
wouldn't raise that much anyway, guys.
Wouldn't raise that much anyway. So let's just give you $1,000 a month, which will get sucked up by your landlord and now medical costs, and will be primarily funded through a VAT, which is the most regressive tax in the world. I'm going to open it up in a second, but I just want to say VAT is a very regressive tax.
Right.
And I understand, and I have seen the graphs that these people send me where they go, you're totally lying about Andrew. Look at this graph. And here is the bad things and good things. And Andrew's on the good axis. But in terms of reality, what he's talked about with the VAT would still be incredibly regressive. He talks about high ticket items on things like Amazon. First of all, who's defining it?
Right.
Secondly, why is it, just think logically for 1 second. Let's just do a little bit of a thought process. If you're on one hand saying that we cannot have a wealth tax, we can't do anything about media monopolies, we can't have real structural reform in this country because these companies and these individuals, oligarchs, are so powerful that it's not going to happen. why on earth do you think that those same forces would allow for the Easter Bunny of a progressive VAT, which is basically impossible? Because, by the way, if you did have a progressive VAT, that would yield like no money, because you literally would have to just be like, okay, this is for Maseratis and private planes, right? Like, what does that mean? Does it mean if you order $500 worth of things on Amazon, that becomes extravagant spending? I mean, a lot of families order basic household necessities that way. So I think between this and if you've been actually analyzing and thinking a little bit critically, which a lot of people haven't, he's opposed to Medicare for all, and he's vibing with Biden.
And, you know, it's what we have to keep in mind here is this is that part of the election. This is the time of the primary where the deal making happens. I've been saying this for a while, but every crowded field, some are crowded because they want to block people like Sanders. And in this case, you know, I always say to folks, like, pay attention to those early promises, like what hooks you in the beginning. I think there are a lot of folks who became part of the Andrew Yang cult, believed in his idea, and are just tuning out everything else because of emotional attachment.
Totally.
Let go of the emotional attachment. This guy is there to basically, I think they're trying to push Pete out of the way because Pete is now a threat to Biden. So Biden and him are teaming up. This is like Game of Thrones stuff. That's how you got to think about this at this point.
Well, the Yang
It's like
UBI.
Game of Thrones stuff.
I mean, Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg is a fan of UBI.
Yeah, it's almost like the opposite of the tax equation we were talking about with Bernie earlier, where he's like, yeah, you'll pay more upfront in taxes, but you're going to get a whole lot more in services. Yang, you're going to get $1,000 a month in UBI, but you're going to lose a whole lot more than that in the destruction of the welfare state.
Right.
And it's sad to me because I really do believe in anti-work politics and in automation and in using that as a springboard to a better world in a post-capitalist world. I think it's going to be really important. That's not what this is. There are left versions of the UBI where you can balance it with universal services and a welfare state. The National Welfare Rights Organization in the 60s and 70s is a really good example of that. People, mostly women of color, were arguing very strongly for it in a way that really would have moved the ball in a productive direction because we need to work fewer hours. It's better for the environment. It moves us in a better direction.
Well,
left
you could
UBI
call for a 20 or 30-hour work week. And incidentally, Jeremy Rifkin wrote a book in the 1990s called The End of Work. And I don't know if, by the way, like, I think how many jobs are actually being lost by automation is a much more contested subject than what Andrew Yang says. I don't know, but it's not as linear as he says it is.
Right.
It might be a real thing, but it's not like this inevitable.
Yeah, it bumps up against certain
about that too,
Marxist
the left
equations.
Will say, you know, the alternative, which is that it's not. It's
it's
over.
a factor.
It's a factor.
It's a factor.
It's a real
But even Rifkin in End of Work, even he actually correlated it with like more like postmodern FDR stuff, where it's just like how, again, like the basic stuff, like how many places need to have infrastructure rebuilt, how much environmental projects. And then on the other hand, he even got into like, why can't people be paid to be mentors? Why can't people be paid for peer-to-peer learning? I mean, there's all of these generative ways that you could correlate it with. And it reminds me, Ben Burgess always uses the example of like, there was a period in Rome where a certain class of serf or peasant was like given a certain amount of grain ration, essentially to stop them from rising up.
It's pork.
It's pork.
This is essentially what this is.
Yeah.
If you don't know what pork is, it's when lawmakers go back, you know, especially the bad ones, go back to their communities and instead of talking about, you know, all the crappy things that they've been doing at the Capitol, they go back, they hand out, you know, checks for community improvement projects. They create a park. They, you know, I don't know, like they have an event for $1,000 and invite the whole neighborhood. It's like the guys in high school that would throw all the parties and run for president and then win and do nothing.
Right.
Same thing.
If there were a way to do
Bernie
it,
is power, not pork.
Right.
That's the distinction.
It's a jobs first economy, a jobs first, housing first, you know, protected jobs, obviously.
I mean, I love the idea of decoupling access to basic necessities from your participation in the labor market. That's a very important horizon that we need to be moving towards right now. And if there were a way to do the UBI in a substantial enough way so that would actually reduce people's dependence on their employers. I've heard it talked about as a universal strike fund. That would be awesome. I also think the amount of political power and will that it would take to get that kind of UBI, like we might as well use that to get socialism.
That's I agree the same. It's a complete distraction. And he's putting out there, like I criticized Andrew Yang on Twitter, and all of the Andrew Yang people came out and were like, oh, well, he does understand labor because he got an endorsement from Andy Stern. It's like, well,
Stern sucks.
Stern sucks.
Exactly.
Please. It's like saying you understand.
Doesn't Stern have a UBI proposal that it does like go at guts like the welfare state? Did he do a book or something about that?
I think he wrote a book because I didn't read it.
Andy Stern is trash.
Yeah.
That's like
not a labor leader anymore.
Yeah, he hasn't been a labor. He's been like I used to do labor and now I'm talking at Davos guy for quite some time. I mean, that's like an anti-endorsement. I mean, also, yeah. I mean, you're calling from a 208 area code.
Buying shot at us. We're in Retta.
Hello? You're calling from a 208 area code? Who are you? Where are you calling from? Hello? 208. Are you there? 208? Is that our fault?
Hey, is this 208?
Yeah, 208. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, sorry, my name's Sean. I'm calling in from Sumner, Washington. Sorry, I'm on a picket line right now. I got a little loud there for a second.
Awesome. How's it going? Are you, maybe instead of
going
picketing,
all right.
I could give you $10,000 a month and a joystick.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and pass on that one.
Is Andy Stern there already?
Is Andy Stern there striking with you guys?
No, he's not. I just wanted to call in. I just want to tell you a little bit about what we got going on out here.
Awesome, please do.
Okay, so I'm with the Sumner Education Association. We're the teachers union here with the Washington Education Association.
Awesome.
We're walking out in support of the Sumner Para-Educator Association. This actually makes, the strike is over a contract dispute. They've been working without a contract for 2 months because our school board won't turn over the money that they've gotten. Are you all familiar with what the McCleary decision is in the state of Washington?
No.
Okay, so the McCleary decision a few years ago.
I totally thought Nomiki would
massive...
be. I'm not going to lie.
No, not. I mean, maybe I did, but
I'm sorry?
I forgot.
Nothing. Doesn't matter. Go ahead. Sorry. McCleary decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
The McCleary decision was a massive court case in the state of Washington that found that the state was not living up to their constitutional requirements to fully fund education.
Mm-hmm.
And what it resulted in was a massive multi-billion-dollar distribution of funds to various school districts, to every school district in the state of Washington. Except the problem that we're running into is that they didn't provide any guidance necessarily for how that money was to be distributed. So some of it was earmarked for salaries, some for facilities, but they leave it up to the individual locals to negotiate our contract. So all throughout the state of Washington, I don't know if you remember last year, there were lots of teacher strikes going around for contract negotiations because every district had to totally blow up their whole salary schedule and redo the whole thing. And these districts want to keep as much money as they can in their pocket for their own projects, for administration funds, basically so they can have discretion over it instead of distributing it for salaries.
Right.
Teachers negotiated for our raises last year, and now para-educators are not being able to get theirs. Essentially, they're being held up because they're a much smaller group. So we're walking out with them to show them, union solidarity, et cetera.
Awesome.
This is only the second ever classified. There's a different certified employees are like teachers, and then classified employees are everybody else essentially.
Mm-hmm.
This is only the second classified union to ever go on strike in the state of Washington.
Wow.
It's fairly unprecedented happening right now.
Why is that, do you think?
I think it's just because they're smaller groups. Every school, there's a chronic shortage of paraeducators. There are people who work with the most vulnerable and the most, the students that have the most needs, individual needs, and they work in the classroom. But I think it comes down to they just are smaller groups, and it's harder to organize smaller groups, especially with the unique sort of organizational structure we have here in schools, where each building is sort of their own little community, and it's hard to get across a whole district.
Huh.
I think that's it, but it's definitely picking up speed all around the state. We've had tons of unions just like this that are organizing and having these same contract disputes. And last year when it was us teachers, going after it, it sort of had a cascading effect once more people started getting in a more contentious negotiation.
That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. Thanks for calling and letting us know.
Yeah.
How can we support?
Thanks for giving me a shot.
Yeah, is there a way we can support?
Well, we've got actually the Tacoma Longshoremen's and Warehouse Workers Union, Local 23, is out here supporting us. We've had people from the American Letter Carriers Union come out. They were dropping off snacks and everything like that. But honestly, the shout-out's great. If anybody's listening in the Sumner, Bonnie Lake, Auburn area in Washington, we're going to be having a rally at 3 p.m. at the district office at Sumner, Bonnie Lake. We'll be meeting at St. Andrew's Church to march over. And depending on what happens with negotiations, we will be back out on Monday. Hopefully we won't have to do that, but we'll be out here until it's over. So material support's great. It's cold, it's rainy, it's gray. We need coffee. We need hand warmers, any kind of thing that people can bring. Send down pizzas, any kind of stuff we can. Any school district in Sumner, any school building in Sumner, Bonnie Lake right now has a picket going on outside. So
if people want to send pizzas from other parts of the country, how do they do that? Where do they send it to?
I would say go on Google, pick a building, look up the address for that building, call in. It's not a major metropolitan area right here, so the local drivers should have a good idea where it is. And just have them drop it off to the picketers out front.
And it's in, and just tell us where the part of the Seattle, Washington's in again?
So we are in a town called Sumner, Sumner right now. And the other town is called Bonnie Lake, Bonneylake. I also sent an IM in earlier because we were driving around giving support, so I didn't have time to call. But you can also read the text there. But we're picketing outside until noon. It's going to be 7 to noon. And we're taking a little bit of a break to recoup. And then the rally is at the district office building in Sumner, Washington at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Awesome.
Thanks, Sean. That's amazing. Appreciate it.
Hell yeah. Solidarity.
Hey, thanks for everything you do. I listen to every single one of your shows. I haven't checked out the meme database yet, but God damn, your country lawyer thing for Giuliani had me dying. Dying. I can't. Especially when you start talking about the hypothetical about the Haitian guy and everything. Oh my God, dude, it was cool. Grim, but too
right. I remember that.
So thanks for everything y'all do. Thanks for the coverage on Sanders, Lula Libre, everything.
All right, Sean. Thanks a million, man. And we're gonna
appreciate it.
We got that for the blog?
Indeed.
So there's gonna be ways people can send you guys pizzas and everything. That's awesome.
Cool. Very cool.
Thanks, Sean.
Fantastic.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's take another quick call. You're calling from an 847 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 847. Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, it's Josh from Chicago.
Hey, Josh. What's going on?
I guess I was going to give an update on the teacher strike, but I'm kind of pressed for time. But I do have a question on Lula. Yes. I read on Twitter that he might get released. Can you it's sort of difficult understanding because I'm not plugged into the politics here, but in Brazil. But what is like the status on that? Is there actually a chance you think he might actually get released?
It looks like there actually is a chance, and I think it's going to be like a week or two. They're going to know. This is the first time. It's basically part of a larger decision that would void a bunch of people's convictions because of this like whole corrupted Lava Jato process. And there's some positive signals because like some of them were talking about, some of the justices so far were talking about the military dictatorship. One of them actually read from the Intercept reports. On the other hand, he's a political prisoner. Like the whole process has been such that I would not put it past them to do some type of like broad ruling that is favorable, but carve out an exemption to keep him in jail. Like that would not shock me. Now, but as it happens, like, you know, if you go back to 2018, there was a decision that I think it was the decision that blocked his habeas corpus request. And people forget this, but like a major Brazilian general basically went on Twitter and was pretty much like, we hope you rule the right way. So there is like, there's another dimension to this. I think both and also I would say a U.S. dimension. Like, it's not normal protocol that a head of state visits CIA headquarters. Like, Bolsonaro visited CIA headquarters when he came to D.C. Now, on the other hand, it seems like, I mean, it's so much closer than it has been. And Lula has already said, like, I read that when he leaves, he's going to go and hug everybody who's been at his visual. And then he's going to go to Globo, which is like the core like propaganda network. And he's going to lead a demonstration in front of Globo. So those are like his first two things that he's going to do when he leaves jail.
And have a slice of pizza.
And well, he said he's going to have a whiskey.
I was like, there's got to be something that's...
No, he's going to have a whiskey. He definitely said he's going to have a whiskey when he gets out. Him. Yeah.
Send him whiskey.
Send him whiskey. All right, Josh.
Josh, you coming to my party later?
Oh, he's gone. Wow, Josh was in and out.
He wants to borrow the Coke shirt, so he's going to have to come to my party if he wants that.
Inside baseball.
The Koch brothers shirt.
The Koch brothers shirt.
Specify.
The Wyatt Coke.
It's not
shirt.
a
Wyatt Coke shirt. Let's play this footage. So in Oakland, the school board has voted to close down several schools, and this has obviously evoked a huge community response. It's a city. I'm quote unquote now. From EdSource. The board recently approved a citywide plan which found the district could close or consolidate up to 24 of its more than 80 schools that still serve up to 37,000 students. The plan is to redirect funds to remaining schools to improve their quality. Now, of course, there's no structural answers to this in terms of property taxes and education, the broader issues that we need to do to tackle. I always have a mixed feeling. I mean, I think in a city like Oakland, there probably is some genuine, like, structural things that limit the city's resources, right? So I don't know, like, some of the rage at this should be directed statewide and federally for sure. Mm-hmm. And always at Silicon Valley, which hovers over this whole area, just sucking resources out of the whole bay and destroying its history and legacy. But these are some of the protests that have been taking place. And the police are literally, I mean, the ruthlessness that they're responding to even teachers is disgusting and should be highlighted.
I mean, you remember Oakland during Occupy, those
brutal.
photos.
They were really brutal. They have I mean, if you look at, Oakland is an example of a very, I mean, like everywhere else, but an extremely racialized police force that gets deployed on protesters. So the paramilitary approach that they take to policing that city in a very race-specific way gets mobilized when there's a protest. Right. And I think that overlaps also with the fact that Oakland has such a powerful political history too.
Right.
Jesus Christ.
So brutal.
Got a couple more here.
Things are crazy around the West Coast.
What the fuck? Did you see him shove her?
Look at him. Look at this guy. Oh my God. He is
brawling.
like on steroids or something.
Yeah.
Guy's gonna step in and push back.
We got a closer angle of that too here.
Oh my God. This guy.
He does look roided up.
Angry. That's what happens when you eat the meat diet, guys.
You think this is a Jordan Peterson?
Yeah, he's ready to use that baton already. It's like
he's ready.
It's like he just entered a football game or something.
Yeah.
Right.
And watch,
and like
sees her coming.
Fat ones.
Oh my God. Oh, Jesus. Did you see that?
And then that, you can see like
Woman.
that's what everyone's reacting to here.
Right.
Yeah.
Just ran right up and shoved her.
I think, if you Google Oakland Police Department, the recent history there is extremely corrupt. Like, to the point of like, I don't want to cite off the top of my hand, but people can look it up.
And,
Definitely.
I mean, not for nothing. I think we all know this, that the U.S. government has a long history of using law enforcement to put down labor struggles.
Especially in that area.
To put down labor struggles and to put down anarchists and communists and to put down anyone who's fighting for their rights in an extremely racialized way as well. So, like, I have to laugh when people like Elizabeth Warren say that, for all of our history up until very recently, capitalism worked great for everyone, because it very clearly didn't.
Definitely.
Who asked her that?
That's just what she says.
Oh,
That's
she's
like
what
one of her,
but
like,
she
That was unprompted.
Oh, okay.
Totally
That was a
unprompted,
tweet.
totally
Yeah.
She
spontaneous.
defended capitalism, but saying that it used to work, it never used to work.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like a few decades after World War II when the bosses and the government were forced to behave themselves by a massive workers' movement.
Colin from Nebraska. Michael, I was phone banking for Bernie in Iowa last night. Nice. What way to go. And a 19-year-old asked me if I've heard of you and if I'd heard the Bernie or bust Bill impression. I responded, go to patreon.com/TMBS. Patreon.com/TMBS. Subscribe to TMBS on YouTube and get your tickets to the Philly show. They are going fast. Well, it sounds like you guys nailed it.
That's amazing.
That's hilarious. Let's do, actually, I just want to talk about this briefly because he's just so bad. So bad. Pete Buttigieg is the worst person in the Democratic field. And I say that as somebody like, I think I'm pretty transparent. I think everybody besides Bernie is a distraction and sucks. I have no interest in like making my, and also, and this pisses the other group off, I will support any of them over Trump. And in the primary, it's Bernie because I have a serious agenda.
It's simple.
It's really simple. I would vote for Yang, Biden, Gabbard. Give me a name.
Klobuchar.
Yeah. I vote for Delaney over Trump. I would.
Tim Ryan.
I would.
Oh, wait.
I would let Tim Ryan. I would love Tim Ryan. Like, oh my God, Tim, I thought you meditated. Why do you look so nervous? I would. That actually, the only thing that's funny about the idea of anybody besides Bernie getting the nomination is watching Trump just bully and handle them would be extremely entertaining. So that being said, there's one candidate that I find to be by far the worst and most off-putting, and that is Pete Buttigieg. I think between the staffing story with Mark Zuckerberg, the horrifying biography, which you can read about in Current Affairs, Nathan Robinson did a very good treatment, to the fact that just synthesize this, okay? Like, he's for all intents and purposes like the mayor of Amherst, Massachusetts, right? Like, it's a nice town, there's colleges in it, and there's problems. There's even, as everywhere, there's even been like policing problems. But it's also, at the end of the day, like, I don't think anybody has died or been killed in Massachusetts in Amherst by anybody in a while. Or even when it happens, it's pretty rare occurrence. Like, that's like huge news. This guy runs the equivalent of that town and presides over a police department that sounds like it's something like out of New York or Oakland.
Right.
So you're synthesizing like, and I'm not an experienced person. I don't care. But it would be he's like the only person running where you could actually be like, really, dude? You're like 36 years old and you're mayor of a little town? You really think you should be president?
And Bill de Blasio, by the way, not taken seriously.
Bill de Blasio not taken seriously. And, I don't take
He's also, the city that he is a mayor of, criticisms aside, is larger than Amy Klobuchar's entire district. Like, let's just be real state.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. 100%. So you synthesize that with like, okay, I guess college town. And also he totally disappeared. There was actually a mayor from Florida that was going to try to run.
He couldn't get the funding. There was a lot of political dynamics internally.
I don't remember. I don't know anything about that. I just know he had the best position on ice for a second. And it was the same thing. It was like, look, if Pete Buttigieg is somehow serious, why the hell is that guy not serious, right?
I mean, he could have made a case, side note, sorry to interrupt, but
Please.
For decentralization. He could have said, like, this is, how we fight Trump right now is through cities. But unfortunately, Pete Buttigieg doesn't have that record. He is not...
How we fight Trump is through cities.
Well, that's
Anyways,
a big argument right
here's
now.
how I got rid of the black police chief. And here's why we have sort of civil rights cases per capita. Like, he is fusing together, I guess, College Town May to run for president with Jesus Christ. You presided over an incredibly racist police force. And then, of course, he's an arch gentrifier. So I don't know if people are getting the message on Pete Buttigieg, but I do just want to say he said yesterday, and he's quickly reversed himself, but he did say this. Let's actually start by, do we know what his great innovation for the Supreme Court was going to be? Oh my God. Do we know this brilliant idea?
It's so dumb.
It was like a court packing type thing, right? With
No, but he's going to pack the court with moderation.
Right.
Exactly.
That's exactly what we need to balance that court out right now.
I mean, even mainstream journalists during the debate were criticizing this. Like,
Court
he's got to be really
packing-
unpopular.
Court packing for idiots. No, he's literally said, we should have 15 people on the Supreme Court. I'm quoting now from the Hill. 15 justices, including 5 nonpartisan justices who could only be seated if the other 10 agreed. This plan would incorporate justices who think for themselves, like Justice Kennedy or Justice David Souter.
As
if those are apolitical people.
Right, exactly. Like, what would you define a nonpartisan justice? An Intercept reporter? Like, I mean, seriously, the idea of nonpartisan is bullshit. We need to end that.
I think what Pete Buttigieg, and look, to be fair, he, like, the only positive aspect of his candidacy is he's the first, like, legitimate, like, openly gay man running for president. That's obviously historical progress. And look, Judge Kennedy ruled the right way on some very important LGBTQ civil rights cases. Now, that was so in isolation from the rest of his record. Like, he didn't even establish like a steady civil liberties streak, to the point where my speculation would be this man just literally had somebody close to him in his life. It humanized him on that issue. Because on every not dynamic decision making on civil liberties or race or policing or the death penalty, and then a pure corporatist, including like a major proponent of Citizens United. So we all know what nonpartisan means. It means I'm not a social monster. Like, I understand that transgender people exist and it doesn't make me have a meltdown. And then besides that, yeah, I think pretty much if CVS wants to recreate a form of indentured servitude, I think we can do that.
It's basically like Ellen DeGeneres' dinner table.
It is
Thanksgiving dinner.
That's it. So, and there isn't really much more to say. I mean, Bernie got his burn on saying, I prefer more like Sotomayor and Ginsburg, which will still get him no credit with the type of people who, put posters up of Ginsburg in their houses. But, I mean, I understand the generic appeal. And I even understand that there's people in the Democratic Party who are center-right in their politics. But if you have any pretension of progressive governance, and you care about people having health care, and you care about the Supreme Court, and you care about the future of digital, and you also even find it a little bit weird that a guy who served in like Army intelligence is occasionally being like, there's a lot of problems domestically, and I'd like to apply my experience in the intelligence apparatus to our domestic problems.
And McKinsey.
Maybe that should disturb you a little bit.
Yeah. He never talks about McKinsey.
Bad guy.
The thing to keep in mind also with this is take it like a layer below, right? Of course, we're going to be outraged on the left, but he needs that outrage to raise from centrists. Right. He wants the centrists mad at the left because he raises money, and he's signaling to the LGBTQI community to continue to support him financially because he needs to take it to Iowa. Right. He needs to take it to and pull from Biden's support and whoever else he might be. I don't know what his formula is, but Biden, despite
Biden and Warren. Biden because of the political lane, and Warren because of all of the professional class.
Exactly.
Like, they have posts.
Who's going to vote for this guy in the general election?
He's not going to win a general election. That's not
okay.
happening.
He's got the same politics as Hillary. He's I guess maybe a slightly better candidate than her just because he doesn't have as much baggage, but he's definitely a worse candidate than Warren or Biden in terms of getting people to vote in the general.
I think we're overestimating the concept of some voters voting on policy first. They might
I'm not talking
address
about policy,
but they may not, like people who are like supporting Hillary because they wanted a woman supporting it, and then they addressed policy. Oh well, we would have liked her to be a little bit more progressive on certain issues, and that's why we're with Warren now, because she's a woman and she's more progressive, and that addresses more of my Upper West Side, like New York Times reading audience. That's that crew. But with Pete, it's they're not looking at him from the same lens that we're looking at it from. And I think that's a problem on the left. We keep thinking like even the centrist Democrats still care about they don't care about policy.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I actually am saying with regards to Pete and again, this is the classic fusion of one thing that's horrible and one thing that I think is politically true. So one is I think homophobia in a general election is a problem. And I would totally be willing to confront that for the right candidate and do that push regardless. He's not the right candidate for all the other reasons we talked about, but that's going to be a real thing in a general election. And then the other thing is I think his particular brand of charisma is for a very narrow subset of people. And I think that once you are out, I think the problem is, and I agree, I think the left does this, but I think a lot of Democrats across the board do this too, where they either spend one tendency is fuck everybody else. They're terrible. They're all horrible. They're all deplorable. We don't need to understand them or think strategically, right? And then the other tendency is you just project outwards what you like onto everybody else. So for me, I do think pound for pound, Sanders is the best person to go up against Trump. Absolutely. Right. And yes, I totally think the socialism word might be a problem for certain people. Mm-hmm. I totally think age might be a problem for those are real things factored in my analysis. Mm-hmm. What I see some people do, and they do it very heavily with Pete Buttigieg and Elizabeth Warren, is they never anticipate. They just basically say, because you can drill them down. You say, okay, well, the poll numbers don't bear this out. They're and then there's the real problems like homophobia, right? And then it'll just like, oh, well, I just think when you put them out there, they're just so likable. I mean, that's literally all you hear. And it's like, well, actually, first of all, for a lot of people, no, they're not.
Right.
And that is, I mean, I hate to use this phrase, but that is like very much not an argument. Your intuitive feeling that someone else that you have
in your LA bubble.
Yeah, is going to have the same emotional reaction to somebody that you do. I have an emotional reaction to Bernie. I think he's a great, awesome uncle guy.
Yeah.
And I have a specific set of experiences that make me think that. There is a ton of people who are going to have no reference point for him like that. I'm not projecting you know what? No, you just get Bernie out there. People just end up liking him. There's an argument that involves poll numbers. It involves geography. It involves where things fit. It involves how you make an argument. And all of the Buttigieg Warren arguments are just they're just so likable.
Well, and the concern with Pete is I actually see his strategy very similar to Obama's strategy in 2008 when they were in a crowded field.
Yeah.
He's like Obama without the Obama.
He's exactly, and but he has a lot of their staff too. Let's keep that in mind.
That's such a fantastic point. Obama, I mean, go back to you, but just Obama was a world-class charisma.
Right.
And people keep doing these plans. They did a plan for Hillary. They did the same Obama plan with Hillary. It's like, there's one thing missing.
Obama.
World-class charisma.
And another thing is missing. Well, this could be a 1992 situation. Even though Obama was world-class charisma, relatable, was an anti-war activist in the beginning, he also was running against John McCain, who at one point was leading in the polls until the economy collapsed in 2008. And this is also when George W. Bush was at his lowest, the lowest popularity of any president. So you had a scenario where Democrats, they had to pick the best person on the planet. And in that scenario, that was the only way they could win. If they had a mediocre candidate, even though all these other things were happening, I don't know if Democrats would have won because we don't take care of our party. We don't invest. We don't work on our message. We're never unified in message, and it's all over the place. We have to wait for the Republicans to fuck up for us to actually win elections.
Right, totally. That's the only way they know how to win. They either have a world-class charismatic candidate who wins at the top of the ticket, like Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, who do nothing to build the party, or else they are like, well, you know what? We lost Congress again, but let me tell you something. After a couple of pedophilia scandals and a massive recession, I think we might take back the House by 10 seats.
Right.
So just wait for it.
Well, they're up against so much right now, too, with all of the gerrymandering. It's only getting worse the more Republicans take over state governments.
That's right.
All of the just depression, people who just don't come out to vote because they don't think it's going to do anything for their lives. Some small proportion of working class swing voters who somehow think that Trump is more populist, whatever. We're going to have to radically change the electoral map in order to win and in order to overcome all these things. And you can't do it with the same politics that lost in 2016, certainly not with an uncommonly charismatic front person on them. You need, even Bernie might not be able to do it, but I think he is the only one who could.
And he should be running on that. I mean, one thing, and I hate to go back to the DNC, but being on the Reform Commission, a big battle we had, like the battle that really got nasty behind the scenes was about whether or not we wanted to, decentralize the DNC and invest, truly invest in state parties, truly invest in local parties again, because it's a consultant, money-making machine at the DNC and the DCCC and the DSCC right now. And so we wouldn't be fighting these gerrymandering wars if the Democratic Party, Barack Obama's Democratic Party, stopped just providing the 8th and 9th homes to 5 consultants.
They do send really powerful emails, though.
They said, those are powerful. But we wouldn't be fighting over these things.
We did a bit once, me and Felix, where it was like, the Republican emails are awesome. They're just like Barack Obama tried to end the white race. We stopped that. However, my friend, there's still a little bit more to do. And then the Democrats are just always like, Michael, is Barack Obama freaking out?
Fox News poll. Oh my God, the Fox. Anybody who's running for office?
Hi, this is Chuck Schumer.
The Fox News poll, I closed. I don't care about Fox News poll. You could be a great candidate. Great candidates are using these emails, by the way, right now.
Not good.
Gotta end it.
We gotta do. All right, we really have very little time left. We gotta get out of here. But I know, Nomiki, you wanted to talk about Tulsi, so let's do a Tulsi clip. I don't really care about this one as much, but I think the Indian nationalism, the Hindu nationalism stuff is actually way more relevant, frankly, for why there needs to be a systemic critique of her. Look, my position with Tulsi, and it's the same with Warren. Like, I'm in non-F around mode. If Tulsi takes 2% from Bernie Sanders and hurts this campaign,
right,
you are a monumental idiot for supporting her. And I don't know. I think the media play here is pretty obvious. I get whatever. There's all these critiques of impeachment. There's a critique of the Democrats' relationship with the intelligence apparatus. I think it's all valid. I agree with most of it. Going on Sean Hannity to run interference for Republican talking points, not only do I disagree with, it's just totally strategically bizarre unless your plan is to maybe work on Fox News or something. It doesn't, what's the Democratic constituency this speaks to? This is Tulsi Gabbard on Sean Hannity.
President, which is why I supported the inquiry. I think that inquiry needs to be done in a very narrowly focused way, and it must be done transparently. I don't know what's going on in those closed doors. We as members of Congress don't have access to the information that is being shared, and I think that the American people deserve to know exactly what the facts are, what the evidence is that's being presented as this inquiry goes on.
Nomiki?
Republican talking points. Anytime a Democratic congresswoman who claims to be on the left should not be, using Republican talking points on Sean Hannity's, show. Of all shows to go on, Sean Hannity is I mean, I don't do Sean Hannity. I go on Fox News all the time. I'm not a congresswoman running for the Democrat. That is not the show you go on if you're running in a primary, or at all, frankly. That's like a pipeline to Trump. I think she's lost her mind. I mean, there was a time when I knew her.
I look at it as a soldier. Sorry.
Freaking me
Go
out.
ahead. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Maybe she is a Russian operative.
You know what? She's proving the point. If that's the case, I mean, but that's what I'm saying.
No, she's a national.
I agree. But I mean, she's playing into the hands of Hillary, saying that she's not running for re-election now. She's
and
doubling
Hillary's
down.
just trying to hurt Bernie.
Yeah, that's folly.
Right. Exactly.
That's all she's doing.
Tulsi, before she did her crank fishing expedition by endorsing Bernie in 2015, she was like the person who was saying Obama should say radical Islam.
Yep.
Like she's
That's
a
how
nutcase.
she became nationally known, was complaining that Obama didn't use the phrase Islamic terrorism.
It was too easy
while
on
he
Iran
droned people.
because of the Iran deal.
That's right.
She's not.
But she's
not
the
good.
anti-war candidate.
Yeah, exactly. She's running a Ron Paul foreign policy type of thing.
She's the fucking anti-war candidate. All right.
What does she do with this, though?
I think media career, right?
Yeah, media career.
I actually don't agree with. I don't think she's going to do media career. I
So
think
what's
she's
she
using
doing?
this to raise money right now.
For what?
She wasn't raising money for a congressional race at all. I think she had like $30,000.
Well, she's out. She dropped
she's out.
out.
But I'm saying it's clearly going into her presidential fund. I don't know what she does when she shuts down that fund, what she decides to run for. Maybe she's running for governor. But she's raising money. She's continuously raising money, and I don't think staying in the race, unless she just wants to go to another debate, get into the next debate, is yes, a media career might happen, but
she said she's going to stay
can do
in
that
for
without.
the primary. I don't know. I don't get it.
She should just go the Marianne route, become some kind of like TV self-help guru. She'd be great at that.
But if Trump wins re-election, she's in the cabinet.
We'll see. It's possible. Final call today. You're calling from a 631 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, what's going on, Michael? This is Matt. I'm calling from DC.
Hey, what's going on, Matt? What's on your mind?
Nothing too much. Just want to say, big support of the show. Also, Sanders, of course. I'm actually a volunteer for the campaign, and
Awesome.
just wanted to ask a quick question.
Yep.
I was listening to Ryan Grimm on the Hill this morning. I think he's taking over for Krystal Ball for the week, and he was going into some stuff about Sanders' Medicare for all proposal, and said that apparently there is still a gap somewhere in the funding for it, even if you do account for, I don't know, he's raising the taxes or whatever. So that's one question that I had. And then also to follow up, just a couple weeks back, I think it was the day after the last debate, I had the distinct displeasure of listening to my boss kind of complain about countries that have Medicare for all systems, that those people still need to buy some form of supplementary insurance on top of that. And it's not really just as simple as, having a Medicare for all system. Because apparently, like at the company that I work at our international offices, he said that like the company still pays for some sort of like supplementary insurance.
Depends
So
where.
it depends
where. It depends where. Like in Canada, you do, and it's not even supplementary insurance, but not like in the UK as an example. Right. Very little. Very little. Although they've been getting cut. Yep. That's because of cuts. I mean, also
some people.
I don't know about that, though.
It wouldn't be like a.
Thanks for the call, man.
For instance, in Greece, it's still a nationalized healthcare system, but you can still choose private, but it's not the way that ours is structured.
No, I understand that. He's talking about needing to buy supplemental. I'm not sure what he's referring to. I don't. The
maybe
funding
doesn't cover dentistry.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. But I thought NHS did.
I think.
I'm pretty sure it does. But as far as Bernie's funding mechanism, I mean, I don't know. Everybody I know who's read the bill says that it does have funding.
Except for Amy Klobuchar, who is a co-sponsor,
right?
And all the people on stage who say they read the bills, but yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I trust Ryan, but that is contrary to everything I've ever heard. So I don't know. I'd have to follow up with what he's saying. I definitely trust. I mean, because you said it's Ryan, I take it seriously.
And even if there were a gap that needed to be worked out, that would not be a reason not to do it.
Right. Yeah, of course. And I'm sure, Ryan would agree with that.
That's the concern with going down that rabbit hole. And I really, I'll always say these on my little Twitter chats, is like, stop falling for, stop answering to the right way.
Totally.
You got to champion your messaging, maybe address it for a second, and then pivot back to your messaging.
Totally.
Yeah,
I agree.
The right wing basically is just trying to waste people's time now.
Yeah. Those conversations, honestly, like they're mostly, the big visionary plans and visions that you put forward and you rally people around is what you do now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's it. All right. Final IM of the day. Steffo from Chicago. I've been listening to David Harvey's lectures on Marx's Capital following Jamie's recommendation. His theory about money emerges from Marcus is fascinating, and I can't stop thinking about it. Awesome recommendation. Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
100%.
Thank you, Nomiki.
Thank you.
See you guys on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the man